All right, mic check 1 2 1 2. Can anybody hear me in the chat? If anybody can hear me in the chat, push one. Willie Little John, what's going on? All right. I think somebody can hear me. So, all right, this is the open chat number 15. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust as usual. We'll see how this live stream goes today. All right, Willie Little John has confirmed that he can hear me. So I'm surprised that more people aren't actually coming in for this. I figure we have this conversation because liberalism and conservatism, the isms that people, which side people take on social development and uh, social political issues. I think there were a lot of people waiting on the other hangout and have not noticed that we have gone live. So I'll give them a few minutes to come in. All right, people are starting to come in. If anybody wants to join the panel, um, just drop your email in the chat and we'll send you the link. We'll also take any questions if you don't want to partake 100%. If you're going to join the panel, make sure you raise your hand so that we see you so we can actually bring you on because you may be sitting in the queue for quite some time before anybody can see us or anybody can see you. Sorry. Hey, Complex Design, what's going on? Right. So this hangout, this live stream really stemmed from a lot of conversation that was happening before with, left, right, not even Democrat or Republican, more about um, the adoption and embracement of a liberal agenda and how it has impacted a lot of Black people or the community itself, the culture as well. Um, people are embracing some of these movements, these micro movements, and when you really listen to what they're saying, it's so far extreme and so unrealistic. It's hard to fathom who are they really pandering this to, and what is the main objective behind it. A lot of what they're saying, from based on my observation, is that they want a sort of society that doesn't have any real structure. Um, Lack of structure leads to also is derived from a lack of standards. So no standards leads to no structure. No structure leads to no organization. No organization leads to no hierarchy, which means that there's no leadership. So in what way does that benefit anybody? Jay Shines, what's going on, brother? DE Raptor, shalom to you. Um, yeah, CGH, what's going on? And what's happening here is that they're constantly pushing this agenda, and it's like, where does this stop? Where does this stop? How do you even get anything out of what you're asking for? And we've been labeled, at least on this platform, we've been labeled conservative. I would argue, Guten Tag, Jay Shine, Guten Tag. I would argue that we're more progressive over here than anything else. Some people would argue that liberalism and progressivism is the same, and it's not. Progressive Progressives and liberals are of the same hemisphere, but not the same agenda. So when we talk about being liberal, the based on everything that I'm seeing, based on everything that I'm seeing, is that they like the community the way that it is. They just want more wealth in it. Wealth meaning more economically driven um, and economic empowerment, but keep the status quo. You know, all the effery, all of the unrealistic ideals, altruism, very altruistic. Why are they pushing this agenda though? What is the real outcome behind it? Or what is the real motive behind it? Sorry. Send that to Jay Sean. Good evening, Thalia. It, I just had to send that email out. Um, Again, yeah. So going back to my point, all these sort of rogue ideals about how, in which way they want to go with the future of the community. We talked about this many times before. You have between 2019 and 2050 at best. Some people are saying 2053. Dr. Claude Anderson says 2055, I think. You have between that time and 2050, that rough time frame to actually turn this around. And based on the conversations that I'm hearing and the dialogues that's going about, the hashtags and whatnot, I'm not seeing I'm not seeing any sort of agenda being put together to address the future of what we have today. So, hey, what's going on, Black Shingo? Yeah, so you know, we're seeing all of these sort of let me bring you guys into the queue. Sorry. Yeah, so we're seeing all these sort of left leaning, left sort of ideals being pushed down the throats of a lot of black men. and the responsibility being put onto them as if somehow, some way, it's their responsibility to fix the community, but it's not their responsibility to actually lead the community. You should just be responsible and accountable, but not actually in the leadership role. And the liberalism that is being pushed, based on what my observation is, that throw out the standards, throw out the structure, throw out the hierarchy, and throw out and thus you have no leadership. So you have a leaderless sort of society. Anything goes, and somebody else should pay for it, even if they're not responsible for it. That's essentially what's going on, based on my observation. Maybe somebody else might feel different. Anybody else can jump into this. Feel free.
Greetings, Mike.
Greetings, brother Triz. What's going on, man?
It's going good.
Back day.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's just a misconception. People believe that freedom can be had at no cost.
Hmm.
Even freedom isn't free.
Hmm.
And I just want to use just a quick example of people who are staunch opposers to gun rights. Now, if police were able to guarantee a level of responsiveness that would uh, eliminate the need for personal gun ownership, then I would be all for everyone relinquishing their firearms. If they can guarantee that, hey, no one would need firearms, or at least no one would have firearms, even people who are criminals, we will find a way to get rid of all the firearms and not have firearms, and make America somewhat safer, then I'll be all for it. But they can't guarantee that. So when people say like, oh well, get rid of all the guns and stuff like that, and not understanding a certain level of force is what gives us that latitude to have the freedom that we enjoy here. Somebody has to provide security, and we understand that we're at the point now where there's no turning back as far as firearms. Like from a global standpoint, like if America wasn't armed and America was ever invaded, and the military and the police department weren't able to respond and protect you, then who will be responsible for your protection? See, people who say that never had to take responsibility for their own safety. They've always relied on somebody else to provide safety for them. That's the reason why they can be opposed to certain things, because they're always going to look to somebody else, to be responsible for their safety and security. And so that's like that goes hand in hand with, with some of the rhetoric that we hear, because people rely on other people to provide economic stability while they engage in fuckery and foolishness, because they're not the actual ones building. They're relying on everybody else to build and provide that infrastructure while they enjoy the fruits of someone else's labor.
Hmm. Absolutely. That was definitely dope, man. Can definitely relate to that. And that's the thing, right? They want, security, like you said, man. It's a masculine enterprise. It's the business of men. But when I'm gathering, based on these conversations that I'm hearing in the last not even just the last few years, but even just the last few days, is that there's this sort of perspective that says that the masculine enterprise doesn't necessarily need masculine leadership, and that we'll pick leadership based on the emotions of the participants and the constituents, and that's a disaster waiting to happen. Me personally, looking at this, that is an absolute disaster. Complex myself, we've talked about this a couple of years ago, maybe even recently. I consider myself a technocrat. I look at structure from a political standpoint, based on who is the best suited for the role, based on their skill set, based on their expertise. I don't care how much swag you have. I don't care about your do-rags and your Fat Albert Dragon Ball Z jeans. I don't care about your snakeskin Jordans. I care about, are you the right person for the job? And if so, I need you to fulfill that role. And what I'm seeing here, based on some of these conversations, is that even if you are qualified for the role, we don't want you in that role because you don't have the it factor. You're just not that person. I just don't like you.
Well, Mike, I think a lot of people can't really understand that because they've never been in a position of leadership or in a position of ownership as an entrepreneur. Just a really quick example. I went to a gas station a couple weeks ago, and I went to the pump, ordered my gas, and I ordered a car wash from the pump, with my card. And so after I pumped my gas, I drove around to the car wash. It was kind of like a little drive-through kind of cars where you drive around to the back of the gas station. It's on the side of the gas station. I was right in front of where you pay at and where you enter your code. And so what I did was I normally spray my wheels with wheel cleaner. So that way, when I go through the automated gas station, my wheels come out really clean. And so I was spraying my wheels. And as I was spraying my wheels, I saw a gas station attendant. Right now, mind you, it was like a little bit later in the evening, so my headlights was on because my car was still running. So I was spraying my wheels, and I was on the back passenger side, and I see the gas station attendant coming, and she just starts closing and letting down the actual roller garage door for the car wash. And so I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" She ignores me, closes it. So then I run around to the front, and she's closing the front too. Now, mind you, I spray wheel cleaner and Goo Gone on my car to get some of this bug stuff off of my car. And so then I go in the gas station. I'm like, you're like you didn't see me out there. Why'd you close the gas station? She's like, oh, we're closed. And so I look at the time, and it was still 15 minutes for them to close the actual the car wash. Closed it early. And so I'm explaining to her, I had already paid. Oh, you can come back tomorrow. That was a response. I'm like, well, no, I've already sprayed this stuff. I'm going to give you a refund. And I was saying that this is not acceptable. But see, she didn't understand that from a business standpoint, she was okay with that because she was going to get her check regardless. But anybody that knows anything about the gas station industry, I happen to know because I knew somebody personally whose family owned gas stations. And gas stations make no money off of gas. They make maybe 1 to 2 cents per gallon. So how they rely on what they rely on for fiduciary solvency is stuff like fountain drinks. Beef jerky is a big money maker, believe it or not. Beef jerky, fountain drinks, and the car washes. If somebody a proprietor buys a gas station that already has a car wash in it, and they don't have to pay to have that car wash built, that's a humongous moneymaker. The car washes cost about, with the soap and water, it costs about $1.50 per car wash. The fountain drinks cost about 7 drinks, including the cup. The beef jerky that they sell for $7 costs about $1 a bag. So and then hot dogs, of course. Hot dogs, I forgot how much what the rate of return on hot dogs. These are their big money makers. So
scratch tickets too.
Excuse me?
Scratch tickets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Scratch tickets too, especially if you win because they get a portion of that as well. So, but that person that's working the counter doesn't understand that. So they're okay with closing the car wash 15 minutes early and losing out on that revenue and giving a refund. Now, see, a business owner, if the business owner was there, either the business owner was said, hey, either you open that gas station, either open the car wash back up, or what we do is we say, okay, we'll give you an extra free car wash. So we don't lose that money, that $7 or $8 that you pay for the car wash. We'll give you another free car wash. We're still making money even if we give you another free car wash. But if we give you a refund, we lose all of that money. But see, somebody who doesn't understand business, somebody who's never been in a leadership position, doesn't understand that. That's why it's important for people. If you don't know things from a different perspective, Try to find out before you pass judgment and try to give suggestions. Because a lot of people opening their mouth are doing actually more harm than good, because they're misleading other people with some of the things that they're saying because they don't understand what they're talking about.
Agreed, brother. Anybody else want to chime in on this?
I understand what you're saying, Super Rich, but you gotta look. Well, you don't have to, but looking at this from a point of view of say, blacks in America, and this includes people who come from the Caribbean to Africa, wherever you come from, and land in America. You come here, you think that this freedom exists, unless you have some stake in it, whether you're a government or a lecturer or something. This freedom exists. It was given. It always has been that way. Excuse me. It's normal to have it. But reality is that we didn't get this freedom till what, probably 1970 or so. And we jumped into it according to what people told us. You know, a lot of us didn't go to college till, say, from my generation, until after 1970. And when I got to college, it was like it's a new world, and there are lots of things that I've never seen that I had to try. And that's our idea of freedom, that we don't have to do anything to get it, and it's just there. It's just something that we got, and we just supposed to use it. And we use it, everything about it that we can do within that. I am free to do it. Everything that I can do, I will do. And that's what's brought us to the position that we're in now. Because we went this super liberal, we became super liberal people that, you know, we want to try everything, do everything, and really, what's the consequences, you know? It's only now that we are looking and saying, hey, our children are dying. What the France happened? You know, our women are gone. What happened? You know, and we are discovering this thing as a result of our experience now. And a lot of us are still not even accepting that this is a reality that we are living in. They still continue to live the life that they think is free and liberal and has no consequences because it hasn't touched them yet. I don't know if you agree with me, but that's the way I see it.
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
Is that complex?
Yes, sir.
Oh, sounded like you. Good. What's going on?
Chilling, man. Just listening in right now. I don't know if Mike was gonna follow up after DE. I'll go ahead and
no follow-ups. Everybody can go ahead.
Okay. I've been kind of in and out. Like I just got in out the new gig, so I was listening in. But you know, in terms of like liberalism, I mean, I don't know. I try to see things on a global macro perspective, right? I mean, this was kind of going to be the case when you kind of look at just where the country's headed, where the world's headed, right? There's a fundamental shift in power in terms of global influence. You know, I would say that the United States is on a bit of a downturn in terms of its global influence. And we're seeing, you know, we talked about this last night. We have the rise of a superpower from the East that's starting to make its presence felt. You see, so things are fundamentally shifting and things are fundamentally changing. And so when you're in a time of flux, that's when the notions or idea of what freedom is and what it means tends to morph, you know. And so now freedom, how it's being, you know, how it's kind of being, you know, prescribed by modern day liberalism suggests that freedom is just that. It's free. You're free to do anything. You're free to call yourself, wake up one day as a male, and then you can wake up tomorrow and call yourself female. Yeah, you're free to do that. You know, you're free at any moment to change your gender. You're free at any moment to basically do whatever the hell you please. And so, as a political ideology, you know, that's what we're looking at in terms of liberal policy. You know, we're putting things in place that allow people to kind of do and say, for the most part, whatever it is that they feel they are at that particular point in time. Now, you know, because of our situation, you know, it's largely been to our benefit to sort of act as sort of as a monolith in a sense, not completely, but as a singular block, right? Like if you wanted to get something like reparations, it would be best to do it as a singular block as opposed to a you know, a bunch of, you know, fragmented groups who have different ideas. You know what I mean? So in one sense, the way liberalism works against Black folks is that it robs you of your collective political power. It really does, because now it fragments and it segments everyone. You know, so for example, and you know, no offense intended to anyone who is of the, you know, same-sex persuasion, but you know, when a Black person identifies as, say, like gay or lesbian, right? They say they're gay or lesbian first before they say they're Black. You see, so what that does is that actually puts them in a different category altogether. So that group that seeks any sort of political will or political power is going to be that of a multicultural appearance. It's not going to be just Black people. It's going to be Black, white, Asian, Latino, whatever, right? Because see, they're gay first, and then they are whatever their nationality is second. You see, so this is sort of like the side effects of what liberalism does. Now, I would say that I'm progressive minded. Mike, you know, we've been on our technocratic kick shit since you and I started building. Was going on 2 years now.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So I would say that I'm progressive minded in terms of how I think about things, and I look at future trends and what would actually benefit us. You know, however, I do still have a desire to maintain like a sense of self, you know, and that sense of self isn't fluid. It's very firm. I'm a man, you know, straight up. That guy, I get up every day, and there's no mistake. There's no mistake about that. My desire for my daughter to maintain those type of ideals is very strong. You see, so there's also a bit of a conservatist mindset within me, even though I am progressive minded. You know, I do see technology playing a major part in how society will be, terraformed here over the next 20 to 30 years. Again, the date is 2053. By 2030, it's already been noted that 30 million jobs will be automated. That's 10 years off. Now we go another 20 to 23 years, this country is going to look a whole lot different. So, you know, we have to really think long and hard about our place in all of this. And that's my opening statement. So I'll say that. I'll let you brothers go ahead and continue to build, and I'll chime in.
Hey, shout out to C Boogie in the chat. Dom Gang Division. Shout out, man. Selchi.
Hey, how we doing, fellas?
What's going on, fam?
Good, man. Everything's good, man. To me, I just think it's pretty simple. Obviously, what we're seeing, you know, the extreme side of liberalism is the selling equality. There's no such thing as equality anywhere in nature, even amongst human nature. So what they're really selling is that they want an advantage. But the problem is they're not the best. Like they're not the strongest physically. They're not emotionally the strongest. They're not the smartest. They're not the most industrialist. So they will sell this quote unquote equality to the masses, and the masses, for the most part, they are not leaders. And that's the majority of the people. So that's why we're seeing a lot of confusion, that's going on in this country. And of course, especially amongst Blacks collectively, because we are number wise, a minority. That's our big problem. And as we've already, discussed before, like we don't really have time to be up in our emotions because, technology is moving along very fast and the time is moving regardless of how anyone feels. So collectively, we literally don't have time for emotionalism, period. But that's going to continue, obviously, because number wise, we're a minority, and especially being Black men, we're a sub minority. There are more Black women than men. Even if you want to count guys in jail, all that other stuff, it doesn't matter. There's just more of them, period. And the marketing and everything is going towards them. The money is going towards them. So that's why I say amongst Black men, we just got to do our thing, just be men. And the nature of man is to impose the environment. Now, when I do bring this up to, some older Black men, they kind of get upset because they think that I'm like taking the side of the quote unquote white man. And we can't do anything that they're doing. We can't use any of their, anything that they have touched or anything like that. But it's like, dude, like you got to pay attention. This is chess. This is not freaking checkers. You can't just go in there and say, all right, we're just gonna go in this section somewhere and we're gonna do our own thing. You're still in this land collectively, and if they decide they want the land and you don't have funds, you don't have a support group large enough, you're gonna get taken out.
Saucy,
Yeah,
Saucy, I have a two-part question for you.
yeah.
When you say we, right? And it's just literally just a question I'm asking. When you say we, who are you referring to specifically when you say we?
When I say we, I'm normally talking about Black men because, I'm just straight basic to nature. Men are leaders, period. Naturally. Not everyone's a leader technically, but it's in us to impose the environment. So when I say we, I'm talking about Black men.
Black men. Okay.
Yeah, period. I'm not saying that women are not capable, blah, 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 blah. None of that stuff. But I'm saying that based on numbers and based on what's going on, that Black men, we have to just do what needs to be done. Now, obviously, all of us can't do it. All of us are not capable. But those of us who are and are willing, all right, we do it. And as Mike said, and I totally agree with him, whoever is most qualified. I've been saying this stuff for years. I'm just not online. I really don't care. If Mike is better than me at tech, Mike's doing tech. We are not arguing. If I'm better with the finances, I'm gonna do the finances. And that's it. And that's how an organization works. But for whatever reason, unfortunately, we haven't really seen that on a large scale in this country amongst Black men. We haven't seen it.
Well, politically.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I just wanted to give him the follow-up question because he just spoke to it. So that next part, when you talk about how, okay, well, if we're talking collectively, like we as men, right?
Yeah.
And then you spoke to the pushback that you get from those who are older, and they're opposed to what it is the position that you take in terms of how we stake out what real estate we can, right, while we have the time to do it.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Are those men, would you consider them part of the we as well?
Collectively, yes, but in terms of what needs to be done, just
leadership?
Forgetting about, yeah, exactly. If we're talking leadership, I would say no, because to be a leader means you have to put your ego and your feelings aside, and they apparently refuse to do that. Maybe they're not capable, but at least what I'm seeing is that they refuse to do that. And
Okay.
unfortunately, that's what it takes to be a leader. Like, we just need to get things done, period. We, like, you guys, let's say we're going out on the field for whatever, and I'm the leader or you're the leader. Like, you guys don't have, how would you trust me if I'm all up in my feelings? We're getting shot at. I mean, like, let's be real. We're getting shot at.
Yeah.
And I'm over there freaking out. And you guys are looking at me like, what the fuck's wrong with this dude? Like, he's supposed to be taking us to the promised land, and he over here pissing him on himself.
Well, an example of what we're talking about here in terms of like a technocratic society would be like Singapore. If you look at Singapore, look at how they're politically organized. The most, the most skilled person is in the right position of governance.
Yeah.
Same thing in China. China is run by technocrats. Xi Jinping is an engineer. All of the Chinese leadership staff have STEM backgrounds. So they all went to college, they all went to school, they all have some form of engineering background, some form of technological background.
Correct.
Same thing in North Korea. The leadership there just isn't, some guy, some chubby guy in a suit. The whole entire staff is made up of technocratic people who oversee the society itself. Give another example. South Korea is run by technocrats as well. Much the same. Russia is run by technocrats. Same thing in if I remember correctly, in what was I going to say? Rex Tillerson was brought on from under the Trump administration because he came from Exxon. He was an engineer.
Yeah.
So
Tillerson.
What did I call him?
Rex Tillerson.
Yeah, Rex Tillerson. So he was an engineer. He had, his background came from Exxon, and he had ran very diplomatic foreign policy for the Trump administration, and he got easily replaced because of obvious political climate. But when you look at most of your stable societies, they're all run by technocrats for the most part. If it's not authoritarian.
And it's very masculine.
Right. And, I mean, they still have women.
Extremely masculine.
Yeah, of course, women are there, but I'm saying the environment is masculine because, again, men impose the environment, and right. That's why they're kicking our ass.
Can anybody hear me?
I hear you now.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what happened there, Mike. Go ahead. Bluetooth headphones got gremlins again, man?
Yeah.
No, I had an incoming call and it knocked me right off.
Okay, go ahead, man. You cut off right as you was about to say something.
I think basically what I was just trying to get at is that that's how your societies are run. If you're not an authoritarian government, but they're progressives as well. We did a whole hangout, a whole live stream talking about Singapore and how they run their society. It is extremely technical in how they run it. Very low crime rates, if any crime rate at all. Very well structured. And we're just talking about a small country, less than 5 million people. The American Black community is something like 35 to 40, if not 45 to 50 million people. It'll probably hit 50 million by the end of the decade, or the end of the decade. And so the point I'm making right here is that, and why we have to have just these sort of discussions, is because what kind of future do Black people really want? I just don't think that when you have people talking about genderless bathrooms and rainbow coalitions and stuff like I just don't understand where the value is politically and socially with you know, with these agendas. It seems to be all over the place, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. People are out there with picket signs, you know, they're not even just flagging people's channels, but they're out there, making a lot of noise, banging pots and pans, but I'm not seeing where the real end goal is behind this, right? And these people actually believe that black men who are not allowed to even be in this sort of leadership position of a hierarchy, that they would actually sacrifice their well-being for a cause that doesn't really have an end goal. It's just very weird. I think some of these people. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Mike, I mean, I think that, see, so, there's typically going to be things, right, that are going to serve as the impetus for something else to arise, right, to serve as a better option or a solution to a problem. And then I think this is where I really, in my mind, given where things are going, I've been really following Andrew Yang's presidential platform, right? And seeing, and in my mind, like right about now, the time is very ripe for a black technocracy to serve as a challenge to the black status quo. Sometimes we have to look at the times that we're in and have these types of dialogues, and then come to the very real and even sometimes sobering realizations of what it is that we're faced with. And then the decisions don't necessarily, they're not difficult to see at that point, right? It's just kind of like, that's why I asked Salshi that line of questioning. I say, well, look, like who are you talking about specifically? And with regards to the people who have opposition, the men who have opposition to you, I mean, what's your take on that? And, he's pretty much indifferent because he understands. It's like, well, look, it's either this or we die.
But complex. I understand what you're saying, but if you look at it, the dynamic or what people are pushing is like either genderless or women, and this it's like the idea that come join us. What they say to the black women is come join us, and to their children, they're saying come join us too. And the children are growing up like the black women.
Well, D, don't forget the homosexual black male as well. You see, I
that's what I'm saying.
I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. They're going to school with the white kids, and the white kids are like that already. So they're joining in with that part of society. While the white women say to the black woman, come join us. Your men are just as bad as our men. You know what I'm saying? And we hate our men. That's what they're saying. We hate our men. They're oppressors and all of that. Black women always been in the house with white women, even from slavery. I'm not saying all of them, but that's the place that they kind of like want to be. So every time the white women give them an idea that, join us and you'll be just like us, you have the same freedom as us. Don't forget about your men. Join us and you have the same freedom as us. That's the direction that we go in. And for a black community going forward, that's not going to be a good position to be in.
Well, no, D, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, that was why I think it was Open Chat 12 or 13, where I spoke to the need for specifically black men to really start to think about organizing in structures like fraternal orders, for example. That was the reason why I'm there's a renewed push for this. Like, I'm not a Mason, but I came up under one, my uncle. Now I understand at this juncture why organizations like those have existed for thousands of years. Now I truly understand why. So I see a renewed importance on these types of entities existing and them being comprised of men who will unabashedly and unapologetically take the role of leadership, just like what Salshi was speaking to.
But
Well,
the
I
problem
think the
is
part of the
that
problem that you see is what you guys are referring to is an overarching lack of, or actually a failure to see the importance of sustainability. Like, and this is the reason why you see a an actual adoption of agendas that really have no particular end goal, because that interest is only in an immediate satisfaction, an immediate response, an immediate emotional response. And like when somebody, they joining in on these rallies and stuff like that, they get charged up. There's an immediate reward, like because you feel charged up, you're around people and that energy, and people love that type of stuff. And they walk away from that rally and they feel a certain way.
Well, Triz, understand though that there's an end goal. It's just not for those people that you're speaking to. There's always an end goal for something.
But see, that's the thing. The goal, there should never be an actual goal. There should be a direction, a trajectory. Because once you stop moving, right, or you stop growing, that's an actual sign and symptom of death. There's a constant maturation process and constant progression. People have an end goal because they're short-sighted. They have these simplistic goals, right? And then these goals themselves, once they reach those goals, they realize that what they endeavored is not sustainable, because in order to get to that goal, there was a specific trajectory to get to that goal, and trajectory is for these simple goals is usually not upward. It's usually like some type of lateral trajectory, or probably a downward trajectory at some point. And so, just like the example that I used earlier about the person at the gas station, that type of behavior is not sustainable, because at some point that particular establishment becomes less profitable. And so the proprietor of that establishment has to look at ways to maintain fiduciary solvency. And what they will do is they'll say, okay, we need to cut back on hours, or we'll have to cut back on actual resource manpower. And I'll do some layoffs.
But there's an interesting dichotomy that you just identified there, and this is really how we need to really start looking at things, right? Because you said there's the person, the attendant, and the attendant's goal was short-sighted. Look, let me shut this shit down 15 minutes so I can get out 15 minutes early. I go do what I got to do. And then there is what the proprietor needs to see out of things. And the proprietor says, okay, well, look, regardless of her goddamn goals or whether they're short-sighted or not, I got to cover my ass. You see, so we've got a dichotomy here where you've got one person that has a goal that's short-sighted, and you have another person who's looking at the longevity of things. And what I'm saying is that the majority of people who have these very questionable social agendas, these are the people who are of the short-sighted mindset versus those who sponsor them, who have the long-term objectives. And their long-term objectives actually benefit their short-sightedness.
Correct. But a lot of the long-term objectives actually, right, when you look at some of the long-term objectives, how long are their long-term objectives? Because even some people who have a long-term objective, they may have a plan that may last their lifetime, but after their lifetime, everybody else is screwed, right? And so, like, even to a certain extent, I may say, you know what, I like gasoline cars, right? And I want V8 engines, I want V12. I don't care what the mileage is. And for my lifetime, that's fine. That's for long-term sustainability, that works perfectly. But at some point in the future, that massive consumption of fossil fuels is not sustainable. So I'm screwing over somebody else, maybe 10,000 years from now, who has to suffer from whatever. So I think even the people who have these because like a lot of these agendas, like, right, there may be a benefit to somebody, but at some point you have to look at the trajectory, and eventually the eventuality of a situation is that it's total chaos. because there has to be some level of order. Like, and you know, I'm not like one of these, LBG bashers, and but really have to look at things from a logical standpoint, and how sustainable is that type of behavior?
I'm sorry, DE. One last thing, because I didn't mean to cut you off, but let me just say this, Triz. There's a saying, and I think it's very telling. I think it was Hillary Clinton who said it. She said, you never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Because there's opportunity in chaos. There's opportunity in crisis. You see, so in our minds, we're looking at sustainability as a model for stability. However, there are those who benefit from chaos. I'm sorry, DE. Go ahead.
Shoot. Oh boy. A couple of years ago, I don't know if you guys remember the whole community. The communities selected this whole group of women. I think it was about 15 of them. Judges. The whole court system went to 15 women, black women judges. And if you look at today, you see Bernie Sanders, black woman up front. We were talking about Detroit the other day. This black man in the being, accosted by the black woman, and there's nothing he can do about it. So the leadership is falling upon people who really, I'm not saying they can't lead, but are not leading in the right direction that we're supposed to be going in. And
So
when
they are leaders.
Well, they
Because
are the
they're
leaders.
part of the team.
They are leading, but
They're
somebody
positional
tell them
leaders.
what to
They aren't
do.
real leaders.
But they're in the position of leaders, and so they are leading. It's like the school principal, who is a woman, and her school has 60% of male students. She really can't teach those male students. So the male students in the school gonna lose. And that's the position that we are in. She is the leader of the school, but her leadership is not benefiting a significant portion of the community that she's in.
Yeah, she was put there for a reason. She was put there
Exactly,
not
that's what I'm
to
saying.
lead to.
I think what Sauchi may be saying is that they're more overseers than they are leaders.
Yeah,
Correct.
I understand. She's the overseer. Yes.
That's right.
But when you go into the school, when I go to the school, I go talk to her. I don't go talk to the person who put her in that position. You understand?
That's right. Yeah, I totally understand.
So that's why I'm looking at her as the leader. That's why I'm saying that she's the leader, because I know she's not from what we're discussing here. No, she is not a leader, because she's not really doing what is supposed to be done logically according to the best outcome that should be expected from her. But she's there in that position, and that's what's happening now. A lot of people are being put in positions of leadership that they're not going to do what's best or what they should be doing for the community that they want, that they claim to be serving.
Well, it's not just.
Go
right ahead, MOT. You've been waiting. Go ahead.
The problem is that you don't want to understand. Well, I don't want to say that you refuse to understand it, but there is a reality going on the ground and in history that no one wants to recognize. Is that this person has not been a good faith team player towards black men. They have towards black women in their groups, but when it come time for women's only grant, they don't turn around and hire a whole bunch of black men. They turn around and hire a whole bunch of black women. The reason why they give all these black women grants is because it disempowers black men as a whole. Okay, so you have the left wing who empowers black women, and then you have the right wing who don't fuck with black men at all or black women at all. So of course they're gonna looking at it from a top-down perspective. The only power is to be had is with the particular party who empowers the most of you, even though it's bad. So, you know, when you have the huckster class of dudes who come through with this, women can't be controlled and they're overseers, and those are the things that you have, man.
Yeah,
I mean, but us getting our voice is 40 years after they destroyed everything.
that's facts. And to piggyback on MOT, you know, this is going on in this country when we were taken and brought here. That ideology has been going on. Which was, I mean, if we're talking, you know, war strategy, was brilliant. Unfortunately, they placed, you know, the black women above the black man, and even up until, you know, late 1800s, and a lot of people don't know this, black women were able to own property even before white women. Black women were actually able to own black slaves, and it's well documented. But if you say these things, you're a woman basher or hater, but you're just discussing facts and where all these, you know, where all this mentality has, you know, come from. And we can bring it all the way to where we are today. The reason why, you know, I mean, female nature it has no boundaries. The boundaries comes from the man. So if you're putting a woman in, or a black woman in, who's always in this country been positioned to be quote unquote above and better than her counterpart, black man, well, we should not unfortunately expect them to do what is correct. One, just naturally they won't, and now, you know, their nature is very dysfunctional because they've been acculturated to be this way, unfortunately. And that's why I say, yeah, what were you gonna say, Mike? I think.
No, finish your statement. I'll come right after you, please.
Okay. And unfortunately, this is why we're where we're at. But it's, you know, every time you see a decent black man trying to do something, not even trying, doing something, he gets and I don't even need to look on the outside. Internally, he gets destroyed from black people because he's not. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, go right ahead. I thought you were finished. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
No, I was just going to point out that we've talked about this before. You know, Cynthia Nixon, former actress, was advocating for legalization of cannabis, and you know, you had to, if I remember correctly, I think there were pastors or deacons or something like that come out and shout her down. You know, based on her usage of a term. I think it was about reparations, something like that. Something to that effect, but it was really about social equity. My point that I'm making here is that the very people who are banging the pots and pans also don't want to be, also don't want to see any sort of hierarchy. They want a leaderless society. They like the idea of banging on pots and pans until, you know, you go deaf just listening to them. But they have no intentions on actually creating any actionable items on the agenda. You know, I believe a few of you brothers said earlier that you know, there should be no end goal because then the movement dies. But there has to be some form of milestone that is met. At least from a technical standpoint. Me being in IT, we're always setting milestones and things of that nature of where we want to reach to at a certain date, at a certain time. Based on the agenda, and if we don't reach those milestones, we got to either move them or refocus the whole entire project. Because if we just keep moving the milestones for the agenda, we'll never reach it. You know, because we're not really making any traction. Just moving it around. I see the same thing happening. You know, when it comes to social equity. I was at an event last year, and I think I talked about this on the Black Brain Trust before, that they were talking about small and medium businesses in the Black community, and it was really focused on women and minorities. And I said, who are the minorities?
Yeah.
You know, is these alphabet people that consisted of nothing to do with Black men. Somehow Black men suddenly became a non-entity in terms of minority, and we've been kind of casted to the side. But this doesn't happen in other movements. It doesn't happen with Palestinians. It doesn't happen with, with the Rohingyas or the Yemeni people. It doesn't happen with the Kurds, especially the Kurds, right? The Kurds have the same issue that African Americans have for the most part, minus the international support. MLT, did you want to say something? MLT, did you want to say something?
I think he thinks he's muted, but he's not.
Maybe his microphone might be muted, but not his.
Okay.
Yeah, not his chat. But yeah. So that's the point that I'm making here. That it doesn't happen in other. MOT, you have some issues over there, bro? I don't know if he can hear us. I don't think he can hear us.
Yeah.
Hello.
Can you hear us, MOT?
I can. Sorry, I was going back to the government website. All right, I went down to that place that last week, the place that actually did have those raids from ICE.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to the county website, and that job is still available on their government website.
What are you referring to? I kind of missed this. What are you referring to?
I mean, for the ICE raids in Mississippi that arrested those 700 and some people.
Okay.
Those jobs are still available via the government website. That's what I was checking on here. I mean, like, what people don't understand here is that for the political conversation that we're having, there just isn't any consequences for when people screw over workers in those particular cities.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I missed your question before that. I did because I had to mute everything in order to look up the internet. So I'm sorry if I derailed the conversation. So
no. You were coughing in the background. I wasn't sure what I wasn't sure if you were trying to get in or not. So
no, we're good.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying before was that you don't see that happening with other groups and other movements. You know, even the Kurds, for all intents and purposes, they have the same people, same population and density as Black Americans, but they don't have the same sort of political issues. And political meaning the leaderless and liberal agenda that we're seeing here, sort of liberalism. Over there, they have a paramilitary that's almost 100,000 strong. Men and women have to serve when they turn 18 or something to that effect. And they're very much about the business. I've watched many videos of them going to work on Turkish military. They don't take any shorts over there. So they're really serious about their agenda of building a society, outside of any other nation state. Trying to create their own nation state. Super Trish, you trying to get in there?
Well, I mean, I have a big problem with what you're saying, Mike, because the Kurds are not Black, and we can't use examples from other groups because that would just be wrong. We can't use other groups to learn from because that would just be wrong. Oh. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, I apologize, and I won't use them again, sir.
And I think that's the big problem because, why should we have to make every single mistake when we see other examples? Mm-hmm. Why should we not look at other groups and see what we can pull, and implement into our own cultural practices and common customs, so that way we can excel as a collective too? I just never understood that when people make that argument that, oh, well, you know, they're not black, and you know, you're using their arguments and this, that, and the third, and it's like, well, I mean, if it's actually applicable, then yeah, I do kind of want to use it.
Well, Super Triz, I mean, I have to ask you, dude, like if is, you know, if the wheel wasn't invented by a black man, does that make it any less effective if black people used it? Or do you feel as though we need to reinvent it?
Well, see what you do. If the wheel wasn't invented by the black man, what you got to do is you got to chisel it and make it a square, then try to roll that.
Gotta admit, didn't see that coming.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna say to Trizzle is that, well, you see, I mean, the thing is that, you know, you're a black incompetent man. What could you possibly say that's gonna help us? That's the mentality, unfortunately.
Well, you know what? Just real quick, I have brought up this, you know, and I hate to bring women into this, but the whole concept of men, you know, traveling outside the United States in search of love and happiness, which I'm all for. You know, I wholeheartedly embrace expanding your horizons, but you have to be cognizant of some of the mistakes other groups have made. You know, and I mentioned, you know, that in the white manosphere, because yes, I do, I won't say troll, but I do lurk in the white manosphere, right? And I see what's going on over there. Yeah. And so, as we know, white manosphere, they've been going to Asia for decades.
Oh yeah,
Philippines, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. The most recent, or the most recent, or the most current focal point is the Philippines. For some reason, there was that Philippines for a while. They went to Thailand. Now they're back in the Philippines. Focus on the Philippines. That's the big push, right? And so what they're seeing now is that the same behaviors that they were fleeing in the United States, now they're beginning to encounter them in the Philippines, because they've contaminated, as an invasive species, they've contaminated that ecosystem with their westernized ideologies and their soft disposition towards women. And now the women are turning around and running all over them, just like the women in the United States were.
That's right.
And men are talking about how they're losing property, how they get married, women divorce them, and you know, and now they come back, their locks change, and they got police that won't let them even get to their own property that they paid for. All kind of wild stuff going on over there. And it's like, we should be paying attention to what they're doing, because at the end of the day, this is what I've been saying. Like, and I think somebody said it earlier about the actual environment, how we as men are, you know, shapers and motors of the environment. You know, you permitting certain things means you promote it in essence. And so, you know, you have to look at what are your actual practices, not just looking at changing the venue. You got to look intrinsically and say, okay, is what I'm doing now sustainable? Because again, like in the immediacy, yeah, you're going to get the attention from other women because you're offering something that they can't get from the men, you know, inherent in their particular environment. Yeah. But really, they have to make a compromise because there's a language barrier. So what incentive do they have to actually pursue a relationship with you, be ostracized by their social circles in their own home country to be with you? So if you don't offer finance, if you're not offering the same, or if you're not offering a different incentive than the men in their group, and if you're just as hard on them as the men in their particular environment, what incentive do they have to mess with you? And I think men subconsciously realize that, so they'll never go to those countries and conduct themselves as the men in those countries do, because part of what keeps those women in line, which makes them so desirable, is because the men there have a standard and they've enforced it. Yep. And we get over there and we don't have a standard. We go to these countries with no standards, no morals, no ethics, no principles. And now the women start acting like the women we were running from. Now, what sense does that make?
Yep. I've talked to many women from, you know, all walks of life, ages, classes, education, and the honest ones across the board. I mean, the conversation has been similar since early 20s until now. And the women who are really honest, really get it, I mean, they all say the same thing. All a man has to do is just be a man. Just be masculine. handle your business. And if any woman you're dealing with does not acquiesce as a feminine, get rid of her. Period.
So are you sure that you don't have a certain level of game you ain't gotta employ to make a
Well,
unfeminine person feminine all of a sudden? Is that what you're saying?
I got a $499 course you can take to get that information.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So much for your input, sir.
Yeah.
And then that $499 course is going to consist of quotes from Captain Obvious.
Yeah.
Salchi, do you have a Patreon? I'm sorry. Do you have a Patreon?
No.
You have a private coaching, sir? Like
No.
program?
Do you do private coaching sessions through Patreon?
Do you have Patreon or Patron? They're both
I
spelled the
can
same.
definitely get you Patron.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, I want to make sure we stay focused on how do we organize against this sort of movement that is working against the collective interests of Black men in the community itself.
I mean, for me, I think, I mean, as we've stated before, it's something that needs to be done. I mean, pretty much how, for the most part, already doing it, kind of under the radar. Not to say that you're scared, but it's a strategy, to understand. It's just like going to war. I mean, if you don't understand the environment, and the environment that we're talking about here would be the laws, taxes, things of that sort, finances. If we don't really understand that code, and then bring it within our space, and then collectively, whomever it will take the responsibility and is very capable and has the time, and we move forward that way, I cannot logically see progress. I just can't as a group. Individually, yeah, of course, it's going to be some of us who can code switch and do all that other stuff, and we can move forward. But I mean, like as a group, especially a very small minority, Black men. So like the guys on this panel, we're a very small percentage of Black men in this country, period. Just in how we think and how we move. So that's the only way I can see it happening. That's the only way. I mean, unless somebody knows something better, I'm all ears.
No, that's the best choice of action, and that was the only choice of action. Was to start having minimum standards. That was always the answer to all these questions. Dude, when I was in the Air Force, everybody wanted to join the pararescue and combat controller. You put these dudes through the first week of training, 99 or 90% of them failed. Why? They was cut out for whatever job they signed up for, not whatever job they thought that they can get regardless of circumstances. That's what we have in the Black community. Most people want to sign up for jobs of leaders when they barely don't even qualify to be Black. That's what we have. Regardless of how you were raised or anything else, once you start making things merit-based, you actually have to explain what you've done, how you've done it, and how you think that you're going to impart this on to others. Somehow, all your standards doesn't mean standards at all. It just means a level and standard of submission to the current culture that is not serving us as men. And then people dress that up as actual supremacy. But we have to understand that at the end of the day, we got to take this thing into a new direction where productive men are in charge. And those same people are not for that because they climb the wrong tree to get the wrong banana on the wrong mountaintop. And you can't get these people to turn around and say, well, everything that you've learned so far is not worth it. Those are the things that we have going on in the so-called Black community that we need to change. Well, I've changed it for myself, but I don't want to bring that many people along. But that's the issue that we're facing.
Anybody else?
Nobody?
Yeah, he's right. MOT, you're right. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, do you?
So what standards should we set for basic head of household?
Hey, shout out to Game Changer. He's on the panel. He's in the building.
Going on, Game Changer.
What's going on, MOT? What's going on, panel?
What's going on, man?
What we doing?
So what are the basic standards for a head of household? What should be the basic standards for a head of household in the Black community?
I mean, for one, you got to be a producer. The second, with being a producer, you have to stop picking, choosing, and mating with stagnant people so that way they don't take your productivity away from you and flush it down the toilet. I mean, it's a two-pronged process. Other cultures don't have this because they don't have problems within their culture that are inherent before you actually get to the marketplace. We do have it within the marketplace here. But the actual social psychology from the self-appointed social engineers within the marketplace who claim they have dominance is that the things that they are expert at are non-existent outside of them talking about it. So we have a pre-existing condition, as you will, that's happening within the marketplace that everybody pretend is not happening because everybody's trying to get the same end goal, which is a person's respect who you should not buy for. That's the problem that we have. They've been handed down by boomers.
Game Changer, what's good, fam?
Yeah.
So that's
what
what
I would also include, and I've stated this before, just rites of passage for obviously boys and girls as well. And that's something that we don't even need to, especially at an early stage, we don't even need to push publicly. We just do it unapologetically and let the results show. So when eventually, when it becomes public and you're obviously going to get backlash from Black women and women in general because of the environment we're in, it's just these. Well, let's look at your results for the past couple of decades, and this is the results that we've been getting in a short few years. And end the conversation, just walk off. I mean, that's how I function personally in my personal life. But I think that's another thing that needs to be added. Of course, obviously, as MOT said, Black, I think we generally, guys like us, we generally make better decisions, mating decisions, at least. I think it's just better. I think what we also need to do is also promote that it's okay for other Black men to do that. Hey, dude, it's all right. You don't have to procreate with Bonquisha, who's 250 pounds. Dude, we know you don't want her. That's fine. You can go to the gym, take care of yourself, do what you got to do. If it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years, do it, and then go get what you really, really want. Go create a real legacy. It's proven, and show them that privately. Obviously, you don't want to kill another man's ego. I think that's something else that can be done.
Wait a minute. The problem with your plan is that you won't get as much pussy. I think that there's a hole in your logic.
No.
I think
Game Changer. No, you're absolutely correct, and yeah. that's called dick control. So what? You don't get a lot. Okay, yeah, you're not getting a lot from a lot of women who if you really had a choice, you wouldn't be dealing with to begin with. But if you're really being productive, you wouldn't even have the time to be messing with these lower quality women anyway. You would be messing with maybe 2 or 3, but being more responsible, and it'll be on your time, which anyway, that's what a man does anyway.
Well, yeah, I think you're losing sight of the order of operation. You see, Scarface, Al Pacino's character Scarface, said in America, first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. But you see, what he doesn't know and what Black Americans know is in America, first you get the women, then you get the pussy, and then you get the more pussy. I think that, the priority is shifted and far different than, any other group in the world. So how will we go about changing that?
You don't need
You're correct, but as MOT said, I was going to say the same thing. We don't need to, and I don't like to use my own personal experience because it's only one, but I will right now. I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'9". I'm not like 200 pounds. I ain't got all this crazy swag. I've never owned a pair of Jordans, but when I walk in a building, I get respect because I respect myself. I don't take shit from anybody. But unfortunately, I don't see a lot of black men doing that. So even when I get into conversations with other black men from the streets or what have you, and they might start hating, but I pull them to the side. We'll have a real conversation, and then I tell them how I'm moving. This is how I'm moving. This is what's going on. This is how the women are respecting me. But I mean, it's a very slow way of changing things, but it works. But you are correct. You are correct. I cannot deny what Game Changer is saying. He is correct.
The first thing you got to do is decide whether you want quantity or quality.
Exactly.
And if you decide you want quantity, then you're going to be always lost.
Yeah, you're fine.
But if you want quality, then 100 women can pass you by, and then the one woman that you look at and say, you know what, that's the kind of quality that I want. That's the kind of quality that I'm going to talk to. And that's one of the decisions we have to make.
Right, I agree.
But here's the problem, and I hate to use this as an actual term. We have been taught to no-scope women in the black community. If you ever played Call of Duty, that's how we look at the quality of women. We no-scope them. So once you start aiming down the actual scope and actually look at what you're looking at, the quality don't seem to be there. So the guys who claim themselves as to be the actual guys who have all this success, they're only looking at the success from a no-scope, quote unquote, success rate.
You're correct. You're correct, MOT. But the thing is that guys like ourselves, we're just doing our thing, but we just don't say anything. So on the surface, on the outside, it appears that those guys who are doing that are quote unquote select or are the men, but they're really not for the most part. We know this. The public doesn't really know that.
I wanted to get Game Changer's take on, has liberalism benefited the black community? What's your answer to that, Game Changer?
Yes, initially it did. It was a great idea, when during the civil rights movement. But like all things, it became corrupt, and the concept just got twisted. But initially, yes, it did benefit us. See, liberalism and this whole great society, well, I guess that's part of it, so never mind. Actually, now that I think about it, probably it's hard to say because it did give us civil rights, but it was a blessing and a curse. So I would probably say it did ultimately, because civil rights is more important than, cultural problems that I think that it was a hammer. I think that it was a hammer. Which was meant to be used to build something, but instead was used as a weapon.
Well, Game Changer, let me ask you, would you say that there was a certain segment of the black population that did benefit from liberalism, and then a preceding generation or two or segment saw the hammer drop on them as a result of liberalism? And who would you say that group that benefited from liberalism is?
The group that benefited from liberalism was the boomers.
All right, there you go.
And the group that dropped the hammer was the boomers. And the group that had the hammer dropped on them was everybody else that came after the boomers. The hammer is the boom of the boomers that we're all feeling now.
Yeah, because the boomers settled for access. They didn't care about quality. This is why we're dealing with the quality problem everywhere else. And this is why most people want to look at it as quote unquote female nature when it's nothing but female irresponsibility that they're trying to get you to submit to because they have.
Right.
That's the problem here. And that's the only problem here. And the other things is because I'm probably was raised in probably one of the worst areas in the country, the Mississippi Delta. Liberalism hasn't worked there either. But guess what doesn't work other than liberalism in that area? Conservatism. White, Christian, Southern Baptist conservatism has not worked, has not ever worked, never will work. Even when it was called the Democratic Party, it's the same problem. No person who wants you to vote Republican right now can turn to Mitch McConnell and tell you what has Mitch McConnell ever done for black people during that period of time that he's been there since the late 70s until now.
He married Elaine Chao.
Now when I travel across the country, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I see conservatism from the West being a better option, conservatism from the North, like Montana, North and South Dakota being a better option. But I don't see conservatism from the South ever being a good option for black men, ever. So I just want black men to get out of these areas where if you want to be conservative in the area that works for you. Utah, like west of Kansas, Utah, Colorado, Montana, North and South Dakota, Washington, dude, conservatism works well out. Idaho works, Oregon works well out there. It does not work in the South. So if you
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying, I think what you're getting at is conservatism absent racism is a very good thing. And I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yes.
I would.
What you have in those sectors, even though it might not be there, it's not an overt force like it is in the South. I mean, because what you're fighting in the South is a cultural condition. You're not fighting a party in the South. You're fighting a cultural condition. It may be everywhere else, but in the South, it's a cultural identity. People don't want to be a liberal down South because they don't want to be seen as weak and anti-Confederacy. It's kind of a hard decision along those lines to make when you live in Nevada or anywhere else outside of the South. Your conservatism kind of makes sense, but in the South, it don't make sense thanks to their track record and their results of their track record.
Go ahead, Mike. I wanted to say, go ahead. I had something to follow up on MOT, but I know you want to get in. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna make a point that that's why in the beginning, I discussed being a progressive. See, there's actionable results with progressive and not really with the liberals or the liberalism that has been embraced by our people, man. I was in I'm not gonna say where I was, but there were more black Christian churches than there were black businesses, and I had to scratch my head and say, where are your priorities?
It's in God's hands, Mike.
Churches,
it's in God's hands.
What happens in the South? I'm from the Mississippi Delta. Let me tell you, I went to probably 6 different churches this week alone to see those people not doing anything with money. But if you're trying to deal with anybody who has power in those sectors in the South, you have to go to the church first. To even deal with anybody, that's the deal. That's just the way it is. Because when I went to these Catholic churches in the South, there's not a lot of them. They're packed full of immigrants because they know the Catholic Church is going to give them protection. Who the corporations, while they're not paying their employees, are going to donate to the Catholic Church so they can get access to their cheap labor. So if you actually want to break this system down, you just have to lock up the people who actually supports lowering the wages for actual American citizens. And you have to treat that as another level of domestic terrorism. Because if we locked up bin Laden's driver for a life sentence, why would you not lock up a person who comes on TV and lobby for corporate tax cuts? It's the same type of crime.
You mean like the governor of a state that allows Amazon to operate there tax-free?
Sure. Anybody who allows any of the top 64, now it's probably 120 companies, Apple and everybody else being one of them, to operate at a negative tax basis that's going to ruin and destroy everybody else. Like,
well, MOT, but to be fair here, see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be providing jobs for your constituency, and see, they will be the tax-paying base.
Correct, but that 0% tax base isn't going to get these roads paved. They isn't going to get schools paid for. They're not going to do anything else but make sure they try to lock up people for BS reasons, so that way those people who get locked up for no reason can be an additional tax revenue base for the people who's not paying taxes. It doesn't stop at taxes. All you have to do is look at West Virginia. They're locking up white people there at the rate that they're locking up black people in Georgia, just to get them to work for corporate America behind bars.
I mean, what's wrong with having potholes in your roads and condemned bridges that are almost on the verge of collapse?
Hey, Mike, I prefer the potholes in my lawn.
Hey, man, automatic hydraulics sound tight. The women would love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for potholes.
The potholes where they can grow out of in the street, great.
Well, to be fair, the places that that Amazon exists, like Seattle, Washington, and St. Louis Obispo, don't really have that. I do think that, offering jobs, having a strong job base does help the potholes. Like, there's potholes in Detroit when industry leaves. There isn't really, potholes there when Ford and GMC were there.
Well, I guess, game changer. I guess little is better than nothing, right? See, so if you're going to get tax revenues through me, you're going to get it through my employees who will pay the taxes, right? But not necessarily will you be getting a cut of the billions, right, in revenue, right? The taxes that you should receive from the billions in revenue, you won't touch that. What you'll get taxes from the salaries, from the hourly workers. So that's a very small portion. So I guess a little bit is better than nothing. Yes. However, as Mitt Romney once famously said, corporations are people too, my friend. You see, so if individual people have to pay their share of taxes, then corporations, vis-a-vis the fact that they are defined as people, and according to law, then they should also be paying taxes as well. And I think that's where we're talking about the disparity there, where it's like, okay, I operate on zero tax contribution, and then I put the tax liabilities all on the employees that I employ, and that's how I squeeze the states.
Yeah, I mean, but they are the kings and queens.
Go ahead.
But they are the kings and queens that right now we reference in the Constitution that isn't supposed to happen. Kings and queens was never allowed to run their own court.
You can't have a title of royalty.
Yes, but that's what we have.
Yeah.
Right now, there is not a person who advertises on no news station who don't know what the end product of Fox News is. Not one of them. But they advertise there anyway. But this is what we're falling into. It's just that different spaces have different levels of commitment. And we can look at the South as a place that you don't want to be, probably outside of Texas, because they do produce a lot of energy there. But outside of that, they don't produce much of anything else outside of the few agricultural crops that they can create. And it's just that we don't have any level of protection for U.S. business in this country. Corporate America has overthrown the government. That's what happened here.
Well,
that's what happened.
We have MOT. We have incentives. I mean, think about most tech companies want to move to India. They want that. It's much cheaper to labor there, a lot. And it's not like Americans are particularly more skilled. I'm really referring to the software industry. which is software can come from anywhere and you just don't care because it's downloaded on your computer. But they want to move to India. Labor industries want to move to China or wherever labor is cheapest right now. So we have to give an incentive. First of all, we have to give a counter motivation. We have to give a punishment for taking your business to these places, and we have to give an incentive to keep you here. I mean, or else it's not going to work. I mean, like who would do business in San Francisco? I mean, you know how much you have to pay people. I don't want to do business there. I wouldn't even want to open up a shop, a donut shop or anything there.
Yeah, but that's San Francisco. But if people are taking the San Francisco, I don't want to do business in San Francisco attitude across, like, there's no reason why the top 150 corporations pay zero taxes in this country. There's no reason why Apple pays zero taxes in this country. There's no reason why Walmart paid next to really no taxes in this country. It's just that when capitalism actually worked, there was an actual level of economic patriotism associated with it.
MOT, the only problem with capitalism as it is currently defined, right, with regard to the American context of capitalism, is that profits are a fiduciary responsibility of the corporation. Okay, see, so by law, once a company isn't turning a profit, it's basically going against its obligations to its shareholders.
Yeah, just like a job was to protect that guy who committed suicide, but sometimes that things don't really add up the way it's supposed to.
Oh yeah. No disagreements there. I'm just stating that this is the reason why you see capitalism manifesting itself much in the way that it does. See, because at the end of the day, it's all about shareholder profits. And as soon as you're not turning a profit, you're not living up to your fiduciary responsibility as outlined in your charter.
Yeah, but I don't care about the level of profits. It like I was in Mississippi for the past week. I have never seen that many Latinos in West Memphis, Arkansas, in the areas between the Mississippi Delta and actually Memphis, and no time in my entire life. And I wanted to make sure that I was seeing exactly what I was seeing on the ground. The corporations bring in cheap labor, and we're not talking about people who are poor here. We're talking about people who are already rich here, who still wants to use cheap immigrant labor.
Because you have to maintain a stance of profit. And I argue with my dad about this shit all the time, because he's he's an older guy. It's always like, well, these illegal immigrants these illegal immigrants that. And I'm like, listen, you got to understand what's undergirding all of this shit. It's cheap labor. I was like, no one comes here if they don't have any job prospects.
We fought a whole war over cheap labor.
I was like, look,
it's called a civil war.
I told my dad, I was like, look, would you relocate to Algeria if there was no work for you? Or would you relocate there if there was ample work for you? Like, people aren't going to just uproot their lives and go to a distant land where the culture is completely different when there's no work there. Like, that's utterly ridiculous. Like, the main motivating factor for people to come here is due to cheap labor. So if you ever wanted to know what is it with the quote unquote immigration problem that we have, all you gotta do is point to your goddamn corporations.
I don't point to the corporations. I point to niggas.
I mean, niggas will work for corporations.
Niggas Incorporated.
No.
Oh, that's the worst.
No, what you said,
that would be a great name for like a paramilitary operation. Niggas Incorporated. We destroy everything.
Well, it's a contradiction. It's a contradiction in terms, really, because niggas don't work or organize, therefore they can't be incorporated. But no, I mean, I blame them in the sense that we have a country where you have a large population that's not working and immigrants are coming. That should be unheard of.
Mhm.
Dude,
And
think about that, man.
Yeah. And unless we have a cultural reason why people are refusing to work, and that's what we have. So I point to the niggas, like it's the niggas, particularly the boomer niggas, who didn't work, and other cultures seen the opportunity. Like, hey, if you're not gonna pick these oranges, I will. And then they came over and set up families and stuff like that. But if they didn't, the oranges just wouldn't get picked.
Well, that's what you're having right now.
If that was my only skill, yes, Albert Bird. If that was my only skill, yes. But you see, here's the thing: they don't work for $20 an hour, or excuse me, $3 an hour. They get paid by the pickings. They get paid by the barrel of tomatoes or what have you.
Bushel or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They get paid by the bucket of tomatoes. A good picker can make up to $40 an hour. So no, it's not a $3 an hour thing. It is if you're a kid, but it's not that if you are a full grown adult picker, agricultural worker.
Yeah.
They're not doing that for $3.
No, because the quicker you can get produce to the market, the quicker it can be sold at a premium. More money can be made on it.
Right.
And what people don't understand, in the produce market, there are levels of A, B, and C. This is why you should always shop in upscale markets, because they take the stuff from the A markets and put it on the B markets. They move it from the B markets and put it in the hood. Those are the C markets.
Right.
Yep.
So if you want
The brown bananas, yeah.
correct. So if you want to realize why your meat actually is 15 days old in the rich area and only 9 days old in the middle class area and 2 days old in a poor area, that's the market that is based on. Just that. So
yeah. But no, I don't blame the corporations. Because let's face it, I mean, nobody would do this work if immigrants didn't do it,
Well, I'll tell you like this though, Game Changer. What's actually taking place right now is because of the raids, for example, right? There's been a few articles I came across during the week where they're saying, look, there's a lot of farms, right, where the shit is essentially just being left unpicked, just simply because of the fact that there's no one there to pick it.
Exactly.
And so if there was someone there to pick it, then the stuff wouldn't be left unpicked and it would be getting to the market. That means that people would be getting paid. How, the question becomes, and this isn't an indictment on, say, someone's lack of education or anything like that, but there's a lot of brothers, right, who could use a job, who may be low skilled.
Absolutely.
Or just young.
Yeah, go ahead. Follow up on that, Mike.
No, I was just saying absolutely. You're hitting the nail right on the head.
No,
Go ahead.
I agree, but I mean, like, our low skilled people in the Black community don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They just do whatever niggas do during the day, but they're not producing. They're not picking produce. They're not doing anything. So to complain at that point that others are doing the work that you're not doing. See, I give you a quick story, quick nigga story. So a couple years ago, I'm at the casino. It's a long story why I was there because I don't really gamble, but I was there, right? And I was watching people at the poker table. And in California, a lot of Asians gamble, particularly the Orientals, and they work there too. And what a lot of them will do is they will take their tip money and put it right back on the table. It's a trip. So, but there was this one who didn't gamble, and a Black dude asked him. He said, "Hey," because he tipped them, and typically they'll do it right in front. They'll do it right there. Like, instead of for just taking a tip like $5 or something, they'll just put it on a hand. And he said, how come you don't do that? He said, "Oh, I don't gamble." He said that his 7-year-old told him that the only way to get ahead was through hard work, no shortcuts. So, he don't gamble. And then this old Black dude, and by old, I mean boomer, said, "It sounds like your son is a pimp and you're his first client."
Game changer. Bro, you ain't.
I cannot make this up. I cannot make this up. And I'm thinking like, fucking niggas.
Drop the nigga moments in the Black Brain Trust.
Damn.
You ain't shit,
Wow.
game changer, man.
At all.
Man.
Thank you, though. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Oh,
But no,
man.
I say that to say he was so against the concept of work. Work to him was the equivalent to being a hoe, even if it's working for your own 7-year-old son. But I was just shocked, like, wow, did he just say that?
He literally equated working to hoeing.
Yes.
Well, that's similar to what Dame Dash goes around saying, right? You're not a real man unless you're your own
You
boss.
own your own. Yeah.
You're your own boss. You're not a real man unless you're your own boss. So what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Wait, you're not a real man?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
not a
Like
real
literally,
man.
like your manhood is in question if you're not your own boss.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, that's a bit
And
extreme.
let's
Yeah, I mean,
and
it was a
let's
pretty
let's
stupid
remember
interview.
his he initially was a drug dealer and then he went to the music business. But that's beside anything else.
That's neither here nor there, Salshi.
They're not related.
Nah.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's a part of the. I consider that to be a very liberal perspective to take because you're setting these unrealistic goals for a collective of people. Not saying that people can't own their own businesses, but to say that a black man is not a real man unless he's his own boss. Who works for who then?
Yeah, I mean, but you have to have your own business and date people that you normally should stay away from. You got to do both of those things to be considered a man.
True. Well, I mean, black men do have a tendency to define manhood by the traits that they have in abundance, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So, if you a bruised knuckle dude, then, a real man knows how to protect, and if you happen to be a self-employed person, wealthy or otherwise, or a real man, don't work for anybody. If you happen to be an IQ dude, then, a real man, reads. I mean, so we kind of define it to our own benefit.
Right.
Yep.
Right. There's like I guess a real nigga benchmark, right? It kind of
Yeah.
have like bars and graphs and candlesticks and shits and things like that going around, and pie charts and stuff, and this percentage of the pie shows where the real nigga is, and the rest of it is just you educated lanes.
Somewhat real, and then there's real, and then there's not so real.
And then there's double
Like a
XP
spectrum.
weekend where you get more shit for surviving shit you should have stayed away from, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, got shot 9 times and you survived. So now that's your benchmark, right? So to me, that's a part of the liberalism that I was speaking to earlier, and why we need to have this hangout. These sort of people are pushing this agenda, and it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, this super Negro, he leaps from a trap house in a single bound. He evades officers by revving up his Hellcat Challenger, right? He can leap over fences without touching it with his pants sagging. It's just all types of weird sort of.
Mike, I think you're downplaying that last one. That is very hard to do.
Well, he should join the nigga Olympics then.
No, I mean, because you got to be able to waddle and jump a tall fence.
But why sag your pants if they're gonna be skinny?
No.
Damn it, you beat me to the punch. Damn it.
Go ahead.
You got to be able to waddle at a quick motion and be able to summon that leg strength and just hop over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. but we were not allowed to talk earlier, so we should just stay in our places compared to the people who set this whole system up, not based on actual masculinity. So
Mhm.
I think we should just log off right now before we get too uppity for those people.
No,
Hmm.
these are the liberals. I mean, we're identifying right now. That's the liberals. You know, that's who they are.
This
Why?
is
I
why I
mean,
say
we
like
work.
Western and Northern conservatism is better than the Southern race-based conservatism because it's just an easier concept to follow. You have more freedom, and it's just better. I mean, I've lived in all places, all four corners, so I know the difference, and I know what doesn't work for black men at all, and it's not Southern conservatism.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's just that it's regional based on where you are.
And I'm not advocating for conservatism for black men. I think black by default. I think your upwardly mobile black men are conservative.
For the
Based
most part.
yeah, based on the actions and conversations that I've seen you know be taking place. I would say that they are the ultra conservatives, whereas your liberals are the guys who are too cool for school. They don't see any value in actually getting an A. They're okay with getting a D minus as long as that's enough for them to pass a passing grade. Why work hard to get an A when you can get a D and still pass the same class? But
Yeah.
those are the same guys who end up in sped.
But Mike, I would also say that
What's
those.
sped?
Huh?
What's sped?
Special education.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Uh,
I,
I
I
mean,
would
but
also
Spade
say,
get mama paid though, and he gets a school
It
system.
does. Yeah.
yeah, I would also say that the other guys that it benefits is those who prefer the same.
Yeah.
Oh, let me see if I can get King Sigma on the panel as well before we close out 8:30, 8:45. Check your email, King Sigma.
That's why I say it's regional because people are like, oh, are you from Mississippi? I'm like, well, why would you be up here in this meeting? I'm like, because they kind of align with my values and y'all not on that type of stuff that they're on in like Arkansas, so we can have a conversation. So, and people don't recognize or because they're there, they've been in that space for a while, so they assume all of America is like that when it comes to certain types of conservatism until you start reminding them of actual history and then they act just like conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I say it's regional. You just have to pick the best region so that way you can be able to thrive. So that way you can get to the next level. But if you're trying to get that started through a family dynamic that isn't good, surrounded by a community full of domestic terrorists that isn't good,
Mm-hmm.
and a incentive-based system that's based on things that are not good, you're not going to have a good result. And this is why you got to be able to move around and live around other people and know how to act. It's just really not that difficult. But at the end of the day, some people succumb to those environments so early that it's so hard for them to look at different things as a success when it's not verified by what's normally verified through the things that they're normally around.
I was told the other week that the dope boy, the drug dealer, is the true entrepreneur of the black community, and you brothers who go to work for IBM and Microsoft and Google, you're the real you're the real slaves. You're the real cowards.
Mike, that's
Well, that's
interesting, man.
true.
Because I was gonna say, I was on a Game Changer hangout not too long ago, and there was a certain YouTuber who calls himself the Billy Goat.
Mm.
He had informed us that thugs actually needed to be revered. Because
So
Oh, yeah.
let's build on that then. Let's build on that
okay,
because they seem to be
sure,
the biggest liberals in my opinion.
yeah.
What's to be revered about them? What can the educated upwardly mobile guy learn from that person?
GC, do
Well,
you recall that conversation we had?
I had so many back and forths with the goat, so
Okay.
with the Billy Goat. So, but it's always the same thing. So it was that I actually met him with that conversation. So, yeah, I know how those go, and basically, I think that we have to understand that that the thugs actually protect the black community. That can't be ignored. See, thugs protect the black community from other thugs. So if they weren't any thugs, then who would protect the black community from all the oh, wait a minute. Oh, never mind. They're just useless.
Yeah, I mean, they protect the black community from progress, and they're doing their job quite nicely.
Correct. And how are you protecting if you're in jail and if you're dead?
Right. Right. So, but the entrepreneur thing is a interesting concept because I never seen like a group of people outside of Girl Scouts who are proud of selling a single product. Like you're a store of one product. Like it's kind of like going to 7-Eleven and they only got Slurpees. And that is your business. Like it's a just Slurpee business and you feel like an entrepreneur. Like, they sell their drugs in front of go ahead.
You have a product.
Yeah, but it's just one.
Stagnation. It's called stagnation and bullshit. I mean, they do
Yeah.
have a product and it works.
Like,
Yeah. No, I'm just saying they're Girl Scouts. They're Girl Scouts. They stand in front of stores and sell a single item. They're Girl Scouts.
Well, I think a lot of people who engage in illicit activities, or was deemed by society to be illicit activities, illegal activities, they're really at some point they're trying to evade real work and sacrifice to get to where they want to be. Because, like, say for instance, people who actually who enter into STEM fields, there's a certain level of sacrifice that you have to do because you don't get an immediate return on your investment. This is something that you have to probably get little to no return initially, and then at some point down the line it will pay off, hopefully. That's the plan. And the people who do illegal things, right, they're looking to get something immediate, but even if that return is meager. So you look at somebody who sells drugs. A lot of people in my family went into that particular quote unquote entrepreneurial endeavor, and they didn't make any money. Like, you think about, if you think about like some of my cousins, they will be up 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. They already outside, and they'll be outside all day long. Mm-hmm. And so you think about the amount of hours that they put in, right? Because they got to get up early to get all these little dope fiends, right? So all the hours they put in, and you divide it by the amount of revenue. Well, first of all, you got to take the money that they make, right? And the actual initial, either if they actually bought the work or they got it on consignment, right? Now, once they actually pay back their supplier, then they take the amount of money and they divide it by the amount of hours they were outside. And then you take into consideration the penitentiary chances that you take, because a lot of my cousins, they've been in prison for many years. Many years they've been in prison. And so now it's like, is that really an entrepreneurial mindset when you look at, your cost benefit analysis? Like it doesn't really make sense. And then, okay, and so basically they're in society, right? They're benefiting from society, the aggregation of a consumer base that a society allows. Because if it was a hunter-gatherer times, you couldn't get that many people in one area to sell to. So now they're in society, benefiting from society, yet they are they're going against some of the societal norms that allow the society to prosper, right? But then they go to prison and then they engage in prison politics. Now, I don't know how that makes sense, right? Because you're saying, you guys are conforming, you guys are working for the man, but you go in prison and you got to conform to prison politics. You let other prisoners tell you how you have to conduct yourselves, when if you would have did that on the outside world in society, you wouldn't be in prison. So it's like at some point you're gonna have to abide by some rules. Why wait till you get to prison to want to abide by rules all of a sudden? A lot of the rules actually make no sense to begin with. Prison politics.
They say that the street entrepreneur takes risk and reward, risk versus rewards. So that's where the entrepreneurship aspect comes in. I guess trap houses are the new startups, right?
Stop.
No, seriously, they're the new startup. They got an app. You can cash app them when you need to make a purchase, and they have like a genius bar, except that it's just a stoop in the front porch. I think that's what they're pointing at. That they may have it right, but to your point, you're out there from 4 o'clock in the morning to, let's say, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock the same day, and you only have 3 customers. I consider that a net loss, right? From a business standpoint, that's a huge net loss because of the labor that's involved.
The respect that they get overall for doing this dumbass activity.
Well, they get crowdfunded, right? There's crowdfunding from the constituents, which are the opposite sex, right? They're the BWs. They're the ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones who are crowdfunding a lot of this stuff. I mean, Dr. Phoenix has been on here. He talked about this the other day. Some of the chicanery that goes on with Pell Grants, and some of these people hustling it out and claiming some of these children on your taxes that really aren't your biological children. So there's all sorts of entrepreneurial ideas that they seem to have, and I think Super Triz really hit the nail on the head with it. That the whole aspect is kind of hilarious when you really think about it. It's not really anything to really learn from. Other than the fact I just don't want to be like you personally.
Yeah.
Be like them, right?
There's two things.
They butt the system to have to conform to a system, another system. They butt this system on the outside world where you get to enjoy freedoms, and then they have to conform to a system once they're inside of a penitentiary. And then it's like, the few people that actually excel, none of which I'm related to in criminal enterprises, because all people that I'm related to that were part of a criminal enterprise, they paid dearly for it and they have nothing to show for it to this day.
Exactly.
So the few people that excel, right, they're few and far between. So how is that a business model?
Yeah, that's what I was.
There's two things. One, Curtis Jackson said this over 10 years ago. He said if you're in the drug business, basically, he said you're making less than minimum wage. So it's dumb. We know this, but on the outside it looks cool. And secondly, if you go into STEM or finance, it's going to take time. So will if you actually get into a legal business. It's going to take time as well.
But Sashi, wait a minute. Wait, let me ask you though. But are you telling me by saying this that I could actually make more money picking a bushel of produce than selling drugs?
Yeah.
Well,
but
Quisha's not going to be on your ass though. You know what I'm saying? She's, they're not. The girls in the hood.
That is true.
Man. You don't have to give that up, but you might have to. You might have to serve in prison. And you might be someone else's, punk buddy.
You're somebody else's Keisha, but no. From what I've gathered, from what I've noticed, this is where I kind of actually feel bad for them, because they start real young. So the conversation that we're having as adults and the logic that we're putting behind it as adults really don't apply to them. We're talking about 10 to 14-year-olds with no allowance, who, even though they're making less than minimum wage, they're making more than anybody else in that age bracket. And they're not only encouraged by, the young girls who want, who would prefer, a 12-year-old, let's say, with money in his pocket. He can show the $100 bill with the when they first came out with the big faces, before the lame or the future lame can. Um,
Yeah.
so they make the decision at a very young age, and these decisions are often encouraged by their own parents
Mhm.
because, yeah, they were born for the sole reason of generating money through the welfare system. And once they become of age, or so to speak, um, they start making more money for the parents. Tupac said, it felt good putting money in your mailbox. So there is that aspect of it, and then a lot of them, when they become adults, and everybody else just let past them the moment they got a minimum wage job and they're still on the street with a junior high certificate of completion, trying to compete. It's then that it happened. So I actually feel bad for them, but they want that society respect that they got when they were 12 and 14.
Have
Yeah, and that's never happened.
have all of you guys ever read Richard Wright's Black Boy?
Yeah.
You never
No.
read Black Boy?
No, I haven't
No.
read Black Boy. I will though.
Oh yeah, you need to read. Well, that's a classic. I mean, Richard Wright, classic. He really spoke from the standpoint of a young black male growing up in that early 20th century. But I brought him up because if you've ever read Black Boy, he talks about how his father left his mother back in the early 1920s or whatever, and he had left her for another woman. So he was forced to be raised by his grandmother, aunt, and his mom. And he talked a lot about how abusive the situation was. And what stood out to me was the fact that he has this moment in the story where he talks about how at the age of 14 he got his first job. And he was, back in those times, a lot of black people couldn't read and write. So because he was able to read and write, he was able to get jobs that adults had, and he was making good money. So he had been abused by his parents, specifically his grandmother and his mother and his aunt, like real violently. And it kind of is weird because he was talking about a period that's almost 100 years ago, but a lot of black boys go through that in urban America where they're in these households that are dominated by women. And what he noticed is that the moment that he started making money and he got a job, the abuse stopped with those black women.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a turning point in his life at that moment. So it kind of fits in, what Tupac was talking about, for a lot of black boys growing up in urban America, the first moment that they actually get treated as a human being is when they actually go out there and sell dope. Coming from the Milwaukee area and seeing it in my own family, I've had issues with my own women in my family in particular for encouraging that shit. Because there's a lot of black women that will encourage it because, a lot of us black boys from those areas, our fathers sold dope. And some of our fathers did dope, you know what I'm saying? Or some of our fathers was pimps or whatnot. So for a lot of these black boys growing up in that female dominated environment, the first time that a lot of these guys actually feel like a human being, not just a man, but a human being, is when they actually go out there in the street and they get praised and then they start bringing back money. And then they start, when your mom is telling you how great you are, all the women, you're in a female dominated household, that's how great you are. But then you also see the residual effects of that because now your mama friend want to fuck you. You know what I'm saying? All the women on the block is looking for you. And in that little bitty world that you live in, that's reinforced by the media, the most consumed media as well, that becomes like a position of honor for a lot of these black boys, man. Trust me.
Yeah,
Right.
this
They
is
don't understand.
why you have people who tacitly come into female spaces and just stand around them while they talk super greasy about black men, while they sit there and act like this stuff don't apply to them when it actually does when you're not in their good graces. But somehow they're man enough or more man than every other man because they can sit there and look at other people be affected by it, but it's not them at the moment.
Right.
But
So
go ahead.
So no, I mean, I'm definitely gonna check that book out, King Sigma. But so back to what Complex was saying about the ram, or what did you say, the billy goat?
The Billy Goat.
Okay, did he name himself that because they'll eat anything? No.
Well, I mean, he named himself Goat. I'm calling him a
Oh,
Billy
okay,
because I think it's more specific to the type of goat.
got you. Okay, okay. I
Please,
thought they
please,
eat
please,
anything.
no farm animals.
All right. Okay, but no. I think the reason why guys like that, because it's a shock. It's a very unfortunate shock to go from king of the universe at 14 and an ain't shit felon at 24. It just is. Like I mean, it has to be like a huge cultural shock for that, and it happens to so many of them. You
Oh yeah,
know,
most of them.
y'all who here watched The Wire?
I've seen it.
Pretty much everybody, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've watched The Wire for sure.
So you remember Cuddy, how he was the man, and he went in, and he came out to meet the girl that he was with when he went in, and she was a school principal or some crap like that. And he said, "Looking at you is hard," and she just said, "It's better to not look," and walked away.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Cold.
that is a cold, hard shock that these dudes go through.
But game changer, man. Like I built my rep up on the block.
Exactly. And she built her education, out the block. Like she just watched you destroy your life while she was having a good time partying on your dime. She
Oh
was
yeah.
just enjoying her youth. And while you was in jail, she was like, okay, well, time to hit the books.
I've seen that a lot. I've run across a lot of females like that in my experience, where you will meet a girl that's like a college girl. She's going to school, and then you'll come to find out that she's dating some kind of drug dealer, and you just scratch your head on it. But just from the standpoint of practicality, you'll have like this dude that's illiterate on the block or whatnot, and he will be getting access to these college and these corporate type women, funding their long-term schemes or whatnot. And I've actually seen a whole lot of college girls that dated drug dealers. We had a situation out at Harvard where that was a famous case where the chick boyfriend came on campus, killed someone in a drug deal gone bad, and she ended up going to prison. But man, that happens way more than people think. I saw a whole lot.
Look at Aaron Hernandez.
I don't even know about that story.
Patriots.
Patriots, man.
Yep.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
I live 2 blocks away from the victim. 2 blocks away. I literally go through a street every day, see the family out there. So I know the case all too well. Everybody has talked about this before, that those women support those types of men.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
when you bring that up, the liberals get so angry. There should be no rules. There should be no standards. There should be no organization, no hierarchy.
I know a babe right now. I know a babe right now that's rolling around in her ex-drug dealer boyfriend's Benz. Got away with he had her hold like a lot of paper. So when he got hit, they hit him so fast, and he had her hold the money. As soon as she found out that he was going away for like 10 years, she was gone. She got the whip. She got, probably like around 50 G's or whatnot. She was in the wind. And I don't even think that most people have a clue how often this happened, because a female, all she got to do, so she's out there in the mud getting dirty. But when that brother gets knocked or whatnot, she's just going to clean herself up. A lot of these girls start going to church. I even met some women that was Muslims. You wouldn't even believe it. They walking around with the hijabs now and everything. But if you would have saw them like 5 years before, they had the hair out, all that. But as soon as the dude they was with got knocked, they took that cash, finished up with school, took whatever assets he had, and then went and found a square dude to link up with. I've seen that so many times. I thought it was a normal.
See. The thing is that a lot of the men or males, they don't understand how women really move, and how they really move is it's all about their own agenda, and they can be very malleable.
Yes, sir.
While you're thinking they're going in your direction. Nah, she's going in her direction. Just it looks like she's going in your direction temporarily right now until something better comes along or until you get caught up. But she's still gonna continue going her way.
You know what it is, Salchich? You know what it is, Salchich? I
Yeah.
think that we men have way more ego than that's good for that's good for us, because what happens,
Yes.
a lot of dudes, because they're judging themselves by their body count, they start letting that shit go to their head, not knowing that, man, these women are not 100% inferior to us like we act like.
You say body count? Are you referring to cold cases or?
Oh no, I'm talking about sex. I'm talking about just.
Oh, we thought you were talking about bodies that were caught on the block.
Bed body.
On the block.
I thought you were talking about first 48 or something like that.
Nah. I'm just talking about as far as like, a lot of times we think that women are just these childless, innocent creatures. And you are really a foolish man if you think like that, because these women be moving real smooth on these dudes that got that kind of mentality. Because like I had a conversation with MOT, right? And MOT is big into like overturning this concept of bid bucks being these kind of alpha males or whatnot. And so him and I had a conversation. I was telling him that one of the things that I never hear discussed in these pickup artist conversations, or who is select, who's not a select, is the idea of pre-selection. See, a lot of these dudes that want to sell this idea of pickup artist or whatever, they don't never talk. They're not honest, because they're not talking about the fact that pre-selection plays a huge role in female choice, sexual choice.
What is pre-selection as it applies to that?
Well, pre-selection in the standpoint of women do a lot of choosing as far as like the man they're going to talk to before he even opens his
Facts.
mouth.
So then the men think that they're doing something, but she already chose you anyway.
So men will think that they are actually spitting this great game, or it was
right,
or it was their clothes. But a lot of times, a female would have just been like, "Well, he's a good-looking guy. I like his body." Even before she done already surveyed the whole scene. She done looked at the dude. Ain't no dude opened his mouth, but she already saw one.
That's right.
And then he came up to her, so she actually already pre-selected you. There wasn't no special game you ran. There wasn't nothing about the way that you dressed. That may have helped you, but you know how many women I've had tell me straight out that they've turned down more dudes because of when they open their mouth than not.
Yes.
So I'm always telling cats that.
That's right.
It's more dudes that have actually talked themselves out of pussy than ever talked themselves in pussy. But what happens is a lot of these men had an ego, so they want to tell themselves, "Man, I got such swag and all that." But the female already selected you before you even came and talk. She was just waiting for you to come talk. That's all you did is come talk to her.
And the thing is that the women place themselves in the path that you're going into.
Absolutely.
like I have
it's
this
kind of like a
conversation with so
hurricane
many women.
following a path.
It's hilarious.
It's not,
but you don't really hear a lot of that in this space. Like you don't hear a lot of the selection part in this space, because that would end a lot of guys' talking points. Because the fact is, these women let you dudes think that they stupid. Man, these women be moving real funny style. That's why they be getting these drug dealing dudes, because this woman is sitting up there going to class. She's doing all the good girl things.
That's right.
She's rolling with this cat to her benefit. Yep. And the moment he get knocked, she got that backup plan through her education and through the square dudes that are orbiting her. And she just, because he didn't even, those other dudes don't know nothing about how she's moving on the low key. You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's the problem, King Sigma. You said the moment he gets knocked. What you mean is she's the reason he gets knocked. Because when the cops come knocking at her door, she's singing like a canary because she wasn't really down to begin with. And then, that's a good point. You talk about a lot of guys talk themselves out of something. Yeah. Well, the few guys that do talk themselves into something, they find that that's not sustainable, because a lot of time what's going to really, I'm going to tell you, gimmicks will get attention from women. Yeah. And I said this before, when I rode a motorcycle, I would have so many women trying to talk just because I rode a motorcycle. When I had a cheap motorcycle, I had an R6 that was trash. And women just, all they saw was a motorcycle, right? And then when I had my Hayabusa, and I put, you know what? I had this Hayabusa, and then I put these freaking this neon light kit that changed colors, right? You know how many women would come up to me? This was in my mind, I knew this was the corniest shit ever. It was super corny. And women just ate it up. Women ate it up. But see, what gives women the latitude to do certain things as far as making choices and being choosing, allowing women to choose up, because in some societies, women don't choose shit. The choices are made for them. But in this society, women choose, right?
Yep.
And so what gives women the latitude to choose is because we've done it. And how we've done it is that what happens is that, as Mike V said earlier, we set a goal. We have a trajectory. And then once we get to the goal, instead of setting another goal, we actually marvel at our progress. We celebrate our victories. And then we become complacent.
Well, Triz, Super Triz, what some of the things that we've spoken to at length, and these are on like discussions that really didn't even have anything to do with like, social issues per se, right? But we were talking about corporate and national agendas, right? Companies that have like 300 and 500 year business plans, right? Where their business plans or their business models extend out far past the life expectancy of the people who currently run the companies. You see, so goals in these regards are only but milestones that need to be met, right, in order to carry out the 300 to 500 year plan. And see, when you get to that 350 and 400 year mark, please believe that the plan is then reassessed, right, to see, okay, now how do we move this to extend out another 300 to 500 years? See, so with that line of thought, progression is a constant, and goals are but milestones that basically indicate to you that you're on the right path. That's all they are. Goals can't simply be the end game.
But see, the problem is that these goals have created an environment of complacency for the people that didn't actually put the work in.
I'm saying like, okay, if a goal is the end game, then yeah, of course, right?
Well, I'm not talking about the people that make the goals. I'm talking about the people that promote these agendas of liberalism, because they're not the ones who actually made the goals. They're not the ones who put in the work.
Okay. I got you.
But see, they're enjoying the environment created by the people that are actually doing the real work. And see, and then they want to say, they want liberalism. They want no accountability. They want all these freedoms, and they don't really think about the fact that, there's a reason why there is structure. See, like what they're actually trying to enjoy. Again, it doesn't have any sustainability. It's only a fleeting moment of enjoyability, but then everybody that comes after you has to rebuild the chaos that you've created.
So does the drug dealer have any scalability? So does drug dealing have any scalability? Can you really?
Yeah, it does. Drug dealing has all kind of scalability if you know how to move and shake. It's just the problem that the difference between like your common urban Black American inner city drug dealer is that he don't have an education.
He's small time.
He doesn't have an education to match on the amount of money he got. I'll give you a good example. One of my favorite movies to watch is Scarface, right? Because my favorite character in Scarface is Sosa. He was my favorite character because everyone in my family, my uncles put me on the Scarface, right? They always talk about Tony Montana. And I'm sitting there like, the first time I watched it, I'm like, I don't want to be Tony Montana. He gets killed in his own pool in his own living room, right? His whole world collapsed on him. He had a brief moment, but because of his lack of education and foresight, he destroyed himself. He destroyed his family. He destroyed everything. Whereas Sosa, the guy that was in charge of everything down there in Latin America, if you remember, Sosa was Oxford educated. He came from a family of like doctors. He was highly intellectual. So the money he got, he know how to use it to control politicians, to buy government officials and all that. That's how you move when you touching millions, right? But if you talk to the average Black man in America and you talk to them about Scarface, they won't even mention Sosa. They love Scarface. They love that high testosterone, impulsiveness without any critical thinking. A lot of cats get off on that shit, bro. Off of that Tony Montana type of mentality, that Superfly type of mentality. You may not want to believe it, but that kind of mentality is deeply ingrained in the minds of a lot of American Black men. They don't. They look at a Sosa type dude. They call him the lame guy, not knowing that them is the kind of men that control the world. The Sosa, they control the world. So the reason that after 40 years of crack selling and cocaine pushing, these Black American societies, for the most part, don't got nothing to show for it because they didn't have no foresight. They didn't have an education in business and how you can take that capital and use it as startup money. The ones that did it, there were some brothers that did do it. But you notice one thing about those brothers, you don't know about them because they were smart enough not to do what the BMF Mafia did and put their face all on billboards, be all up in the club with the celebrities, all out there like you a square. You ain't no square. You facing life or kingpin time the moment that one of these cats slip up and snitch on you. And that's exactly what happened to them. So that it's a very short-term kind of mentality that a lot of Black men get from being raised in female-dominated households, like Super Tristan was just saying. The female mind is very impulsive. It's very immediate. Whereas the masculine mind is supposed to be ordered and stoic and foresight.
Calculated. Yep.
That's how it's supposed to be. But this is not what you got over the last 2 generations in Black.
That's what they're calling, you know, the real entrepreneurs of the Black community, and brothers like Sigma who go to work every day for civil service. You know, you're a coward, and you know the brother that works at IBM, he's a cornball. You know, who needs to respect you?
I mean, because I can get anything out of the cornball right away. They get something out of that idiot right away. There's a preset system of control for them under those other guys. There isn't one for King Sigma. That's the problem.
And plus, those women wouldn't want the kind of female situation that you have with Black America. Those women wouldn't want a situation where you got a bunch of Black men that have a mentality like Sosa running around, because them dudes would not be going for all that female domination. Because even in a situation with the men like Sosa, their culture, even though they're doing criminal activity, they still have a respect for their culture. That patriarchy is still in existence. They're just doing underworld shit, but they still hold on to their culture. The Black woman that sees her 14-year-old son out there on the block and she ain't got no money coming in, and here her 14-year-old son, he done dropped out of school. He got, you know, he can't read and write, but he coming back and he bringing a couple thousand in each month. She's gonna, in her immediate self-interest, most of these women is gonna encourage that short-term behavior. And when he get knocked, it is what it is. They're not going to have nothing to say about it because it's not like they're going to get stigmatized within their communities. If you take the top 20 cities with the highest Black populations, in most of those urban poor areas, they look up to the drug dealing lifestyle because it brings in income and it brings in also status. Remember, you know, we have this concept in sociology called relative deprivation. The deprivation you feel as an individual is only relevant to your surroundings or to your access to more knowledge. So before you had the internet, if you don't have a lot of access to people outside of your community, you have your own cultural norms. So in those areas, it's reinforced by the culture itself that the drug dealer is the celebrity and all that.
Well, King Sigma, I will say this: they will demand that they free him. That's what they'll do. Go ahead, Gabe. Sorry.
And they will celebrate when he gets out of jail as well.
Yep.
I don't even go there, Salif. Please don't go there, bro. Because I've seen that in my own family, and it's disgusting, man. I've seen it in my own family, bro.
But would you classify that as the liberalism that in the Black community?
Absolutely.
I don't use the term liberalism.
That's a form of it.
I don't use the term liberalism because I'm a classic liberal. I use the term statism. What you actually have, you actually really get down to the nitty gritty of it, is that it's the expansion of the welfare state. So really the definition is actually statism. And what happened is that Black Americans, because I heard Game Changer mention it earlier, there was a moment where statism was good as far as it giving us the civil rights movement, affirmative action. We talk about that all the time on here. So that moment was very brief though. It was like a 10, 15-year window, and then the shit went to a whole nother stage. So they fell in love with statism while it benefited them, but they didn't understand that statism and expanding the welfare state comes with its own cost and consequences, because the state it's an illogical, it can become an irrational, illogical entity because it wants to grow and grow and grow because politicians want more and more power. So they're going to start focusing more and more on their own concerns and not the concerns of the people. So there's always an attempt to find that balance between a robust enough state to act as a referee in the business world, to protect civil rights and things like that, but not to the point that it becomes overbearing and destroys liberty and destroys innovation. That's always, but it's always left on the voters and the voting blocks to control the expansion of governments. Black America fell in love with statism. You see what I'm saying? Especially the ones that are at the top. to the point that now you look out, and statism has been the cause of a lot of the destruction of the Black family, a lot of the programs and the policies that came out of the 70s and 80s, and a lot of the lack of defense within these families and these communities in saying, hey, this policy right here, this is going to have bad long-term effects. We can't support that. They didn't do that. And so it's just, I try to use an analogy, like I feel like in the 80s and 90s, man, it was like an economic social bomb just got dropped on Black America. And because the family structures with the drug war and all the deindustrialization of the cities, it all happened at the same time. And I just don't think the families prepared themselves for it. They didn't understand the true impact of the kind of policies they were supporting. I really don't think they did.
I can tell you guys right now that the majority wouldn't understand what we're talking about and wouldn't put in the work. And I say that I can go to one instance. This was maybe back in 2007. I was in a room with some people I knew, and some were in college at the time, but virtually everybody in there, excluding myself, they were in like illegal activities. So I'm trying to put them on game on what's really going on in the real world, on the economy, on gold and silver, on real estate. So I'm telling them, I'm saying, hey man, I get what y'all are doing. I don't agree with it, but this is how y'all can get out. So I'm telling them, get a job, you know, the money that they have. And one of them actually had a couple $100,000 chilling, sitting there. So I saw it. So I said, get a job, put some money in some gold and silver, get your education on those things as well. When the market crashes, put your money in real estate and you'll be good. And now you don't have to do all this illegal stuff. You think any of them listen to me? Aside from arguing with me for 3 freaking hours? Not one of them. 2 of them served, I forgot how many years in prison. Another one almost died, got stabbed. But that's what we're dealing with. Like that's what we're dealing with. And that's why
I had a situation like that too. I had a homeboy that kind of got caught up in the game a couple years back, and he was in it kind of deep. And I remember one time I told him about mutual funds. Now I'm like, you know, I'm only like 21 years old or so at the time. And I had just gotten my Series 7. And you know how it is when you learn something new, you kind of want to tell someone, right?
Yeah.
And I was just talking to him about it, like, man, you know, kind of like what you were saying, you knew someone that was sitting on like 100 G's. And I was like, look, man, you should probably take like maybe 50 G's and put them in like these different kind of, you know, mutual funds. And I was trying to explain to him, like, you know, you got like your safe ones, like municipal bond funds. Then you got your more risk ones. So I'm like, just take like, you know, some money and put it aside and don't even think about it. Man, this dude was like, I ain't putting my money in no shit. Like, I mean, he wasn't even trying to look into it. Yep. He didn't care. Guess what? He ended up getting knocked. And I think that he probably got out of prison like, what, 2 years ago? But he's finished for the most part. But it's like, that's the kind of response that you would get from these cats a lot of times. They ain't trying to hear that shit, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's obviously like a certain level of distrust which has been fostered within the Black community for the greater populace, and not understanding that, you know, business, you're essentially using other people, and you're allowing them to a certain degree to use you. You know, you guys kind of use each other, even if you guys have, you know, differing ideologies, you know, for the sake of business. You know, you can, you know, do joint ventures and things of that nature. But I think Mike Vick asked earlier about, you know, the correlation between, you know, illicit activity and liberalism. And what I think is, again, that liberalism allows, you know, a certain individuality, and it promotes individuality, people, you know, being individuals. And so when you're an individual, you're not thinking collectively. So you're thinking about, you know, how you can prosper and how you can, you know, find enjoyment in certain things. And, you know, and people, you know, like you got people who, like, you know, I do online dating too. You know, I meet people in real life, or, you know, sometimes I go online and I just look up, you know, swipe on Tinder or Bumble, and then you'll see women, you know, van life and, like, you know, like just like certain things where they have absolutely no desire to contribute to society whatsoever. None. All they want to do is enrich their own lives and enjoyment. And like, you know, I'm young, I want to free, I want to travel, I want to do this and do
YOLO.
that. But what are you traveling for? Like if you're traveling, you know, go to another country.
Experience.
Have an experience, learn something, then bring it back to your community. and enrich your own community with what you learned abroad.
They don't. It's all about status,
travel.
bro. Status.
Yeah, that's what it is. Travel
But
is
that's
like
liberalism. That's liberalism is, you know,
I don't know what that is.
Let me satisfy my own desires, right? But not understanding that in order to have the ability to do that, somebody has to make a sacrifice. Either somebody made a sacrifice in the past, and you're just using up resources that were provisioned for previously, or somebody is actually contributing to the pot currently, which we all do in taxes. We contribute to the pot currently because we're outside doing the real work while everybody else kicking back with their feet up, and they're not really pulling their weight. But see, here's the thing about liberalism, right? And being an individual and not being part of a society. That works if you have a certain work ethic on your own. Like, there was a time when people were more liberal, back when we were hunter-gatherers, right? But even then, there were small collectives of people, maybe groups of 20, 30 people, you know, that kind of rove from area to area in search of food and where the resources were at, you know, and that allowed a little bit of liberalism for each individual group to have a certain identity. But everybody in that group had to put forth work. If you weren't productive in that group, you couldn't be part of that group because there was not enough resources. Everybody had to have a certain skill set, and everybody had to have a certain work ethic and drive and contribute, because there were no permanent emplacements. People had to move and had to follow the resources. They had to hunt. It was dangerous. You had a high level of attrition. People died because of disease. People died because of, wounded by animals, all kind of stuff. So everybody had to contribute, and that works. Liberalism works when people individually are productive, but you can't be a liberal and not be individually productive.
That's true. That's why a lot of Black people in America support statism, because, like you said, it takes a certain kind of mentality and a orientation towards how the world and how you're going to move out here to be a true liberal. Because people have to understand, being a liberal in the classic sense is all about private property, business, and social mobility of the individual. Statism is all about mediocrity, collectivism. And so if Super Triz wants to go start a business, the statist group, so he's one person, but these other 10 over here don't want to work hard. They don't want to innovate. So they're going to let Super Triz work hard, and they're going to tax him until he has to move to a country with lower taxes or whatever the scheme is. That's what's going on right now. So Black Americans, a lot of them are very attracted to statism because it allows you to keep the bar very low. It allows you to take credit for things you didn't do, but also you never held accountable as an individual. So to be a true liberal, you have to be willing to be able to starve. You have to be willing to sacrifice and be held accountable for all your decisions. A lot of Black Americans are not willing to make that kind of sacrifice.
So you're saying you actually have to be a man? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you know what? That's your you know what? Around this area, the definition of real man changes every 10 seconds. I'm serious, man. Like, I hear every day a new version of what a real man is.
His definition can also apply to women too. I mean, they do have something to contribute, and that they're not doing either. So, I don't know.
They change the definition every day, man. It's like 1 minute I'm hearing that a real man takes a woman with her kids. The next minute, a real man goes and sells drugs and risks going. It's like, if you're talking about Black Americans, the definition of a real man is always the opposite of what's constructive and what requires long-term competency.
King Sigma, a real man is a man that be out there on the block.
Yeah, that's a real man. No. They don't say real man, they say a real nigga.
Oh yeah, yep.
So let's be exact. They don't use the term a real man. They only use the term real man when they're talking to a Black man that's not on the block who's asking what they're looking for. But then when they really get in their truth and they say, I'm looking for a real nigga. They love calling Black men niggas. They love, like, they just love it. Even in music, they love calling us niggas. They love to degrade us as human beings. So they want them a real nigga. A real nigga don't get a job. A real nigga don't go to college. A real nigga don't look for the woman that's feminine and attractive. A real nigga is a drone and slave to the gynocracy, basically.
Well, and he also, when they say when they divide, because they say it began with Chris Rock, when he said, he loves Black people but hate niggas, but really they're the ones who say, I'm a real nigga, you ain't no real nigga. So it's like, okay, I'm not. And then when I'm on when I'm in But when I'm in the neutral zone and they like, you act like you don't like niggas. Like, I don't like niggas. They're
Well,
like, oh, you don't like black people. Like, no, I didn't say that.
well, because they also have a benchmark, and we talked about this probably before you came on. You know, you have to leap from a trap house in a single bound. You know, you have to
Yeah, I forgot.
obey
No, I was there.
obey
Yeah.
the authorities. You know, in a single dash. You know, that's sort of you know, you have to keep the dope under your tongue. You know, so when they show up, you know, they pat you down. It's not there. You know, there's all sorts of metrics and stuff that they seem to be using that realistically is all synthetic to masculinity and manhood.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Mike. It's one of these very subjective things. That's why when I saw your title, I wanted to hear what you guys had to say about it, because to me it's like, I don't know, man. I battle with it. I'm not gonna lie. I really battle with what it means, the black community. I battle with that terminology because that's not what I see in my real life. Because of the way that gentrification has really taken hold of America, a lot of this poverty is being dispersed. You know what I'm saying? Not in one central location anymore. So there's a lot of mixed communities now. So when you talk about the black community, I just really don't know what an objective definition is anymore. Because to me, when I think of a community, I think of a bunch of families, a bunch of constructive people looking out for each other, fighting for each other, protecting each other, and working towards common goals. But when I talk about the black majority and I hear people talk about it, that's just not what the reality reflects for the black population in America right now.
Well, I mean,
where's the ownership, Mike? So I'm saying, like, what isn't ownership a factor in community? Isn't ownership an important part of that?
They own the trap house. What are you talking about?
They don't even. That's the bad part. They don't even own the trap house. One of the Arab or some Latino owns the fucking trap house, because as soon as they get knocked.
That's their version. That's their version of WeWork.
See, and I'm saying I don't know what to tell you, Mike. Like, so when you talk about, I just feel that where I disagree with you on is that you were asking the question. You said, how do you organize? I don't think that we have a problem organizing those that are in the right mind state. Those that have the constructive mentality are organizing. And what we defined as organized 10 years ago is not the same as today. It's been proven with this digital space now. You're able to organize a new ideas. You're able to organize and sharpen your wits with people that you would have never been able to engage outside of some kind of conference or whatever. The overhead, how much you're talking, oh, I got to go to this conference to meet someone like Mike in another state. It might take like a $5,000. Now you can just get up and turn on your Wi-Fi and connect with like-minded people every single day. It's a new decentralized way of learning and connecting. But the important thing is, like, what ideas are being exchanged, because it's all about, that's what creates culture. Ideas become behavior. So I think we are organized and we're getting a message out, because I'm seeing the impact on certain people in society. They're having to bring themselves down to this level. You're seeing it everywhere.
Well, the ideas are basically, you know, you educated brothers you know, are slaves to the system, and us street entrepreneurs, you know, we know what's best. But what's really happening in these social media spaces, and I'm glad you brought that up about being digitally connected, is that the wrong people are gathering in some of these panels and stuff like that. People that typically never would have gathered on the outside offline are starting to gather in these same digital spaces. And it's causing a rift. You're starting to see it in real time.
Yeah.
But that's with the larger accounts, YouTube accounts. That's not with, you know, the more focused accounts, like I would say, like a BBT. I mean, it's growing, but it's not like you would say like a Obsidian.
You know,
in size.
I think it's a positive in the sense that you got to have a separation.
Well, yeah, no. I totally agree.
So if in one space you're bringing it, so you have one mission statement and you have a certain audience, and then you bring in a new group, your audience that like the prior mission is always going to go find that same mission somewhere else. So you're going to have separations go on. And I think what's happening in what some people call Black Manosphere 2.0, a lot of people said that Black Manosphere 2.0 is finished in 2019, which is probably correct. But I've made the case that I think that Black Manosphere 3.0 will be more decentralized. Because as I've learned from some of the brothers that have been around this space for the last 10 years, there was 1.0 that was from 2008 to 2015. That was not panel based. That was not live stream based. That was uploads. Then there was this period between 2015 and now 2019 where it became panel based live stream, and you had like 4 figures.
Yeah, more communal discussions.
But then out of that 2.0, you get like a Black Brain Trust. You get a Game Change. You get an MOT. You see what I'm saying? So you got like this new crop.
It's cleaning itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't really consider myself a content creator. I'm just a dude that when I got something to say, I fire up a live stream, but I ain't really a content creator yet. But then you got like these digital platforms like Black Avenger arising, and this new thing that's coming next year where they can actually have a higher standard for a vetting process. You got things like Slaying Evil. I always talk about Expat King. So that's going to be 3.0. It's going to be more focused on certain kind of agendas, and cats is not going to be associating with people that don't fit their mission statement. That's what I mean by the separation. So there's going to be a separation, like all this bringing in people just for entertainment and ratings. Some cats is like okay with that, and other cats is not feeling that. They want a more specific and targeted message. And so there are going to be a lot of spaces like that in Black Manosphere 3.0, and Black Brain Trust is one of those type of spaces.
Yeah, and what you got to understand, what some people need to understand is that when Hangouts went away, that was the gentrification process that YouTube was inadvertently doing. Because when the day Hangouts went away, August 1st, it was dust balls in the manosphere.
Man, it was quiet, bro.
Dry.
It
quiet.
Was. You could see. I mean, you can see for miles, man. Lots of visibility. It was quiet.
Tumbleweed.
Yeah, it was like Book of Eli, man. You know.
Oh man, it was quiet, huh?
Oh man, you know, he came through the tunnel. He ran into some cats, man, and it was like, you know, he told the cat, man, if you put your hands on me again, you're gonna lose it.
You know what we all should be doing? I don't know if you guys thought about it, but the fact that you guys mentioned how Hangouts it created like a vacuum. I'm gonna tell you, I don't know if they're a private company or public yet. I'm gonna do my own research, but this StreamYards, it was just a beta product. And because of that Hangouts getting shut down, StreamYards and Zoom, I don't know which companies make their product, but man, I'm looking deep into them companies soon because I think they're gonna blow up StreamYard and Zoom because there is a demand for this kind of product, regardless of what YouTube wants to do with their censorship. There's a hell of a demand. We're getting to the point now where I was looking on social media, you know, with this whole Jeffrey Epstein murder mystery or whatever. And I'm noticing how like CNN, NBC, they're competing with small time people, bro.
They have to.
They have to.
Remember, CNN only has 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And somebody like Alex Jones comes through, he has 20 million subscribers.
And don't believe the hype. Epstein is not dead. But anyway.
Yeah, you know what? You listen, you probably
we don't go into that, man, because
Let's not.
We might have another Ken Lay situation, but yeah. So like I be paying attention to a lot of the social media stuff. I like to read like Wired magazine, TechCrunch, and all that, and I'm just noticing that like what we used to consider these mainstream platforms are having to compete with people on these small channels, like, you know, especially on the political level, with this being like an election season. Man, I'm seeing like the Democratic Party responding to like grassroots people. You like Twitter channels where I'm talking about you literally got like these popular celebrity type politicians literally coming down and responding and going back and forth with just cats with like maybe 20,000 followers on Twitter. But then when you look at the kind of grassroots things that's happening in the digital space, you'll have like 5 grassroots people, right? But among them, they may have a ecosystem of audience that's maybe 250 to 300,000. So you may not think on the surface that it's a lot, but they're actually impacting the outlook of a lot of people. So these elite chosen people have to try to come down and cause like some kind of controversy and to move the conversation and narrative back to them. But they're struggling right now.
Yeah, Jimmy Dore, I think his coverage of the last Democratic debates had like way more views on YouTube than like any other channel, all the big major networks included.
Because because they're first out, right? So most of your corporate media outlets have to vet their news first, or else they'll get in trouble for posting the wrong information, right? And they have to walk it back. Whereas people in the social media space, they go live almost within seconds. So and they don't vet anything because they're pretty much on the ground themselves. And now the mega corporations have to be on their back foot trying to make up for lost time, and they're basically relying now on the social media to actually bring the news to them so that they can report on that.
Well, look at the situation with Gillette, what they just went through last week. Mm-hmm. That tells you the power of this digital. I still don't think that most
they took like an $8 billion L over that.
And they're still going to go through with this line of thinking.
Well, they said that game changer, but you know damn well that CEO, he's giving lip service because, I mean, you got to understand he has to save face. But think about it, $8 billion, that comes out to like what? You could pay like what, 10,000 workers, probably like 70 to 100,000. So he's gonna tell you that right now. But I guarantee you, he will be. So many people are gonna get fired. He may get fired. People on the board of directors, because like someone mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, it comes down to profits. But what happened is that because of the way that this statism has been spread through the universities and even in the business school levels, that they promoted this idea called social, what is it called? Like social responsibility, equity or something. It's a term that these leftists have, right? So they were trying to tell people that you should put this social narrative before profits. There are situations where that may work, but there's always going to be people that push it too far, right? So what happened with Gillette? They pushed it way too far. You attacked your consumer base. You told them that you are a bad person. So what you have, the everyday American person who's trying to escape lectures and the churchism and all that, he cannot ever escape being lectured to because he's getting lectured to at school, at work. He can't even go have fun and go watch a movie without getting lectured. And there's been like a rebellion amongst consumers, especially with men leading the charge. So yeah, he's gonna keep pushing that message for another week. But I guarantee you, when it comes to in a fourth quarter, and they looking at their numbers, and the shareholders are like, you know, they got really activist guys like Bill Ackman, real activist investors. They're not playing that social narrative shit. At the end of the day, they're gonna be like, look, you lost us this amount of money. That was just the first 2 quarters. If Gillette lost $8 billion, let's just theoretically say they'll lose another $8 billion. So they're gonna lose between 16 and 20 billion this year because of their stupidity. You telling me you think that those activist investors aren't gonna come along and start cutting heads? You crazy, man.
Well, I mean, we're in the right position right now. I mean, all of us on the panel, we all have some form of content creation that we're involved in, and we have to keep making sure that we drive the narrative and outperform all of these. I don't know what you want to call them now, because at first we were calling them liberals. I don't know what you call these people in the management.
I know what to call them.
What's that?
Lazy. I want y'all to think about this for a second. People will work hard not to work hard. Now, does that make any sense to you? Like they'll sit and figure out ways not to work hard, but really make more work for themselves in the progress. This is how screwed up people are. This is the level of aversion to sweat equity, and it makes no sense. I was on a panel. I was on the neutral zones panel. I forgot who. I want to say it was Supreme King Coon was on there too. Yes. And me and him were going back and forth. And you know, somebody because they was talking about something, and so I came in there and I changed the whole subject. And you know what they were saying in the chat? Like, I'm talking about a lot of people. This guy Super Tris, he's blabbering. I don't want to hear all this educational talk. I don't want to hear all this building crap. That's what they said. Like they literally said, I don't want to hear this building crap.
Are you serious, Super Tris?
I'm dead serious.
Brother, you shouldn't even been on there in the first damn place.
I was going to say the same thing. Like, I'm surprised that you would even take your talents to that space, knowing that it's going to be that kind of situation.
But you know what, though? Here's the thing. If I see a lot of guys, they go on these panels, like even like when they have like certain conversations about, the opposite sex. Shout out to you, Dr. Phoenix. They'll have bands, and they'll be literally trying to speak to the women which makes no sense to me. Like, I'll go on there and I'm speaking to, if there's one person that hears that and says, you know what? Because somebody did write me and say, what's your channel? And this person wrote me, and I actually told them, to come to the Black Brain Trust.
Okay.
And so I don't know if they're watching right now, whoever that is, but
they're always watching.
If I reach one person, it really makes it, because I was on my way to the gym or something like that. I was in the car. I just tuned on and I just started talking. People got mad, whatever, because they want to hear the fuckery. They want to hear the fuckery, and then people also want to hear stuff that shows them like, hey, you can do it without doing hard work. You don't have to go to school. I didn't go to college, which that works for some people, but most people are working in a capacity that it would benefit them if they had education behind them.
Now they told you directly. They said we don't want to hear this building shit. They actually told you this directly.
King Signal, brother. King Signal, brother. I don't think you understand what's over there.
Well, yeah, I've never been in that space. So go ahead, Dr. Phoenix. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't think you know the folks that are over there, dude. I've heard them on other panels before, and these were the same folks that I was talking about with Mike B the other night. One of the guys called himself the Billy Goat, said that it is impossible for black males of 25 years of age to be making 50K.
I'm sorry, he said it was impossible?
Yes, it was impossible. So the conversation.
You never watched the NBA, NFL, MLB?
Man, when I graduated from my undergrad, I graduated with folks that were getting $85,000, $70,000, $90,000 job offers.
I bought it. Listen, hey, I bought a
incubators right now in Silicon Valley are giving out $100,000 to guys and girls that score high on their AC before they even get out of high school. If you score like a certain type of score in the certain STEM related testing, there's incubators out there now like Y Combinator, 500 stuff that will give you $100,000 to come out there for like a year to help them build new apps or whatever. So that is just ridiculous.
But you're talking about the STEM and finance fields, which they know very little about.
Well, I was going to say, how low do your standards have to be when you think that somebody 25 or under can't make six figures? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Game Changer. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, if you
come even outside of like STEM, even outside of STEM and finance, there's still just in labor alone you can get that. I mean, just by being.
I know blue collar.
Like 50,000 is not.
They had.
If you come from an environment where your parents didn't make $50,000, $50,000 will be a lofty goal. Will be a lofty aspiration. In reality, we all here know that 50,000 is not enough, especially if you live in a major city. What are you gonna do with $50,000? You're gonna be struggling with roommates.
KO rent,
driving.
Yeah, that's about 25. That's about $25 an hour. But I mean, like, how much do the Uber Eats people get?
A Snickers bar. They get a Snickers bar. That's what they.
$10 an hour plus.
No, I'm not making fun. I'm just saying, like, isn't that close? I mean,
I'm laughing at Mike.
Nah, them Uber Eats don't get no 50K. Not out here in the Midwest. They probably making like
hell no, not where I'm at. I'm in the Midwest.
Probably making like 30,000.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so basically it's Uber Eats plus a second job, and you have 50.
Yes, but yeah, that was just a silly comment because most people graduate from college around what 22, 23. So
yeah, it's about the average undergrad is coming out around 22, maybe 24 years of age. So
and most of their first jobs, if you're in a major city in America, your first job usually pays you between 40 and 60K.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had about 50 in median. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because what they're pushing for on that platform is mediocrity. That's why they're talking about it. They do not want Trish talking about those type of things because mediocrity is the campaign of the day for them, and they're scared to come over here because that means that they would have to level up and up their game, and they can't do that. So they rather go back to being a D- student in a space with other D- students and kind of conjugate over there.
I've always found
that's all she was talking, with men having to basically, link up and have their own agenda and push forward in terms of leadership, man. He out his mind for that.
This is not even D- students over there, man. I mean, I'm just gonna keep it honest with you, man. This is just up and down crack baby talk.
Well, I think that they want to paint. I think that they want to paint an image of black men, and that is every black man you see is not successful. Each and every single one that you see is making less than 50K. unless she's hustling. I think that's another way to try to bring back this, hood god image.
Well, game changer. Here's the problem. See, somebody who is actually what they would consider to be in a position of influence, right? Certain sacrifices had to be made on our behalf. Everyone here, right? And so we're going to hold people in our vicinity accountable to a certain degree, and this is what they don't want: that level of accountability and scrutiny that somebody who's had to sacrifice to get where they are is going to require from everybody around them. The level of foolishness that certain people permit is not the level of foolishness I'm going to permit, not on a consistent basis. Obviously, there has to be a time for recreation, but most of my life is spent working. Like, either I'm actually physically working, or I'm like working, from maybe I'm doing some self-education. I'm doing something towards progressing towards a goal. And a lot of that is a lot of it is boring. A lot of it is monotonous and tedious work, but it's the sacrifice that's necessary. And people don't want to hear that. People want to, they want you to say, here's a shortcut to get from point A to point B.
Well,
that's the street game.
Well, I like to hear that too.
But that's actually normal for success, period. But people don't understand that. That's actually normal.
But that's exactly why the street game is preferred. Because I heard MOT talking about it earlier. This is why the hood dudes, the street cats, the drug dealers get exalted. Why? Because this is the easiest way to get 50 grand, to get 100 grand, to get a couple $100 grand. And at the same time, these guys are stupid, so most of them can't count, can't do anything, and they're easily controlled.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, I'm just saying they can be controlled typically by the women in their family. I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and my family members, I had family members. I have a similar story to King Sigma. I had family members that used to roll with Larry Hoover and Jeff Ford back in the day, and all those family members that I have that used to roll with that, all of them are dead. Every single one of them.
They don't never talk about that. That needs to be
all of them are dead.
They don't talk about the expendability of see the reason they don't want to have these conversations, because what you just said right there. What have we really done, like a full inventory of the amount of Black men's lives that were destroyed between like 1975 and like the year 2008, for example? Because that's when I feel like the dope game, as far as on the urban street level, really ended around the mid 2000s. It became.
I would agree with that,
because it was, right now it's all just snitches and the FBI. Yeah. It's just been too exposed now. But we don't even know the real body count on how many Black men's lives were destroyed, just like through death, but prison, but also guys that just we don't even know where they at. They just missing.
But black men are disposable. That's the belief. So it doesn't even matter. It matters to us and to me, but generally it doesn't even matter. As long as we can get whatever we can get out of their utility while they're here, that's all that matters.
No, and I would agree with that. And this is typically perpetrated, unfortunately, by the women in these families.
Yes.
Yep.
And so again, I can speak personally to when I was a young man, when I was a teenager and growing up, and I, after I did my first year at University of Illinois, I left, joined the military, and I remember I came back, visited about a year or two later after I got back from Iraq, and one of the things that became really apparent to me was just how out of place I was. And I'll never forget it, because my own mother said this to me. It was something about she tried to hook me up with this girl. She, had a kid, whatever. I wasn't trying to hear all that. And she called me a uppity, sedity ass Negro. Never forget it. Yeah. And it was just one of these things. And I told her, I said, so you would prefer that I would be some baby daddy out here fathering a bunch of kids with a bunch of women, rather than being a productive man and actually have some ambitions and want something in life. And they were perfectly fine with that level of dysfunction.
Wait, hold up. Did you say your mom said that?
Yes.
Oh shit. Let me mute, bro.
The girl was a test, Doc. No, honestly, the girl was a test. I mean, she knew you just got back. She knew that you've been away from the block for quite some time, and she wants to know how strong her influence on you was. You see, a lot of black boys, including myself, was raised with the intention on making you into a proper husband for the daughters.
Well, Game Changer specifically, I think it's who was it? Chris. No. What's her name? Who's the one that who's your mother's daughter-in-law?
So yeah, my mom subscribes to Paris Milan.
Paris Milan, that's it.
Yeah, who she calls her, because we live in the Bay, who she calls her daughter-in-law, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
Wow.
I guess so. My mom basically raised me. Fortunately, my mom didn't raise me, but had she raised me, it would have been with the intentions to attract Paris Milan. So, she would have turned me into Derek Jackson, and I married Paris Milan. And
what are you talking about, Game Changer, man?
Well, what I'm saying is,
I guess you're saying Paris Milan's a liberal, I guess.
Wait, say that again.
I guess you're saying Paris Milan is a liberal.
I'm not familiar with her body of work. I just know my mom listened to her.
What if your mom told you that she listens to like The Wig or something like that? What would you do? If your mom came to you and told you that she listens to The Wig.
Who, Cynthia G? I think she heard her. She actually did. She listened to her for a little bit.
My mom listens to cut my mom off. And she told me that she listens to like one of those like bed wenches or something. I'd be like, Mom, I'm disowning you. I gotta disown you over that.
I would.
Well, my mom listens to all the colorism chicks.
I can't do. Mom, you getting disowned. You ain't getting no gifts this year.
Yeah.
Wow.
You ain't getting no gifts.
Yeah, it's kind of jettison that one, dude.
Yeah.
You know, King Sigma hit on something earlier. You know, like I said, growing up in Chicago, I saw this a lot. You know, I knew so many dudes that got locked up. You know, these dudes were getting I-bonds in the Cook County jail. You know, anybody's lived in Chicago, they know what I'm talking about. But these dudes were wholesale getting snitched on by the females that they were with. Yeah. It was I cannot name the number of dudes that I know that got locked up on all kinds of craziness because the women that they were with, she's down, she's supposed to be the hood gangster trap chick, straight up.
Wait a minute, Dr. Phoenix. Did anybody just hear what I said just like maybe an hour ago? I said this exact same thing. Yep. The guys think that these women are down for them. They're the ones that's telling on them, because what's going to happen is that the cops know that those guys are not going to tell on themselves initially. It's going to take them long to get the information on it. So they go straight to the women. I know. I got cousins who have gone to jail and prison because of women. The cops go straight to them, and all they say is, I'm gonna take your kids away from you. Yep. And they gonna sing like a canary. That's all they say.
Yeah, I got an uncle who died. I have an uncle who died a few years ago. He was a paraplegic, but he became a paraplegic because of a female. A female he was messing with when he was a very young man, early 20s. She had some dudes. She had a dude on the side, had a baby daddy, whatever. Found out about my man. They caught him at a bar. They were out. He was out with her. Caught him at a bar. They beat this man half to death.
Wow.
Listening to y'all depressing me, man, on the community.
But this is the wholesale bullshit that goes down in Black society. And when you point out this crap, people call you all kinds of names. I mean, even just the conversation from a few nights ago, people was, they called me all kinds of names when I talked about, why black students turning college Pell Grants and loans into little hood hustles.
Yep.
People getting all pissed off at me.
I wanted to ask Mike specifically, because building off of what you guys are saying, okay, so you guys are talking about has liberalism, what I call state of benefit of the Black community. So basically, when I hear you brothers talk in these spaces, most of you guys feel like what left of what they call the Black community is not worth any kind of investment of time for the most part. But I want to bring this up. So I was listening to Brian Solange's video yesterday, and for you guys that know about Brian Solange, he's Black Pill, right? So he was doing a story based on a story that him and Kid Organic had put out there about this Black woman that was giving out HIV to people.
Oh damn!
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I had that story just popped up in my news feed earlier today.
Yeah. So it went viral, and now she got arrested. So I think she's down there in Georgia. So she was out here bragging about how she was giving HIV to all these people, and she didn't care. So they, how they do a lot of videos on this stuff. and he did a video and he said that it's gotten to the point that that the black woman in those communities that he comes from, I think he said he's from Chicago or Indianapolis, and he was saying that he bought himself a sex doll. And I wanted to hear what you guys had to say about that, because that was the first time I heard a black man in the black manosphere say that.
Oh, no.
I don't know if we really.
I can't rock with that
Mike, that's not black pill. That's not black.
I can't rock with that.
No. This was a topic that was actually it was a hot button topic. Was it, Mike? Like what? Maybe early 2018 on like BGS's platform.
What was that?
Sex dolls.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about, because he was more talking about the HIV part, but he was saying that because of the status of the American woman has fallen to such a low with the disease and whatever, he was saying that that the sex dolls is easier to deal with than an American woman. Now, I just wanted to know if you guys saw that video, because it kind of shocked me that he actually.
You remember previously on one of your hangouts you invited me on, King Sigma, I did talk about the HIV/AIDS rate, where it was highest at. And again, you know, I went to this continuing medical education course that was done by an infectious disease doctor, and she had done a lot of this information along with the NIH and the CDC. And you pretty much see the hot spot for HIV/AIDS in this country is along the southeastern seaboard for the most part.
Yep.
If you go from about Georgia, DC, Georgia on down, and you go west to about Texas, those are the hot spots.
Oh, that's good news for me.
Well, you know, me being a tech person, IT person, man, the way you solve this from a technical standpoint is high visibility. So we test everybody at 18, test them when they go to jail, test them when they come out of jail, test them before they come on college campuses, test them when they come off of college campuses. And then you test before marriage and test after divorce, man.
Now, who is you saying we? Now who are you putting this responsibility on?
I'm saying we as a state, right? So if we're thinking about this from a technocratic standpoint, there has to be some controls put in place because there's no visibility. So the spread is
yeah, I understand.
Well, Mike, now you're talking about changing policy,
because now you're giving the government, like, I'm just want to know, like, what would that look like as far as policy? That's what I'm asking.
I mean, these are public health issues.
Yeah.
I think it's simple, but
it's no different. The women are gonna fight that one off, man. It would be different than jobs that have to drug test you, right? Yeah. So we have to test you for infectious diseases, right?
There will be more blowback from the women than from the men. Period.
Well, it does. At this point, it won't matter because it's a state of emergency at that point.
Right.
I totally African country. I forget which African country it is. I think recently in 2019 they started testing people, tourists coming in through the airports now. I'm not sure how they're going about doing this. Maybe they found a different method of pricking people's fingers and testing them with their passports and stuff like that.
Are you saying that it would be like some how you got to renew your driver's license every 3 or 4 years? Are you saying that you would try to require some kind of automatic STD testing for people to get like a license or something? Or
no, just mandatory that we need data. So we need in order to get the data, we need to generate it by testing. And I feel like that's onerous because why do I got to do that though? Because you go to your doctor. Now I can understand if you're saying that for your yearly physical, that as a state representative doing policy, that you would make it a requirement that you would make it mandatory. I'm fine with that because I do that anyway. Anytime I go get a physical, I always get the HIV test. I get all that blood work. Oh, I get it all.
But remember, he's talking about a large scale, and obviously we're seeing that the average person is not responsible. Like we over here, we're responsible, so that's a no-brainer for us.
In the same way you're forced to pay taxes, at the end of the year. The same way you're forced to get a flu shot for some of these corporations that you work for and some of these schools that you attend. It's the same thing with a HIV test. 15.
No, I prefer to stay voluntary for me. That's
wait. That's the problem. That's the problem. So if you're voluntary, then we have no visibility on what King Sigma has or doesn't have.
Well, no, wait a minute. Because if you give people I disagree because I'm a believer in that when you give people education and you let them know about the risk that they're taking, enough people. There's a lot of people get those STD tests. They don't have to be told by the government to do it, but the schools educate them on how dangerous it is. After you got someone like Dr. Phoenix, he just told me something on a panel. I was shook, you know, when he was giving out the STD. When he said that, when I found out that the herpes rate was 50% for American Black women, that is some scary shit enough to make any man.
Okay,
but you're not the average person, and I've talked to many of men to this day in their 30s and 40s, and they still fight with me about using condoms. And I'm looking at them like, bro, are you serious? I mean, to me personally, it's a no-brainer. And when I deal with women, I tell them flat out, you're getting tested, period.
Well, to me, it's not about using condoms. To me, it's about building a database so that you know.
No, I understand what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying.
I'm letting him know.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying for the audience.
Okay.
It's a matter of building up a database.
Yeah.
You can leverage the blockchain. You get it in real time. You can print QR codes to people's phones. You can know a person's status just by tapping their phone or whatever it is by via QR code or via NFC. And that will tell you immediately
what you're dealing with. Yeah.
I'm all for
you immediately.
All I'm saying is that a lot of this stuff can be slippery slope, man.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Slippery slope, what a word to use, man. What a term to use, man. So
wait a minute. Wait. Dr. Phoenix, if Dr. Phoenix is there.
Yeah, I'm here, brother.
Okay. Can you, because when you were explaining to us, it was some time back, why the CDC has to have certain diagnosis on document. They have to have.
Well, because you have diseases that are highly infectious that are communicable, like herpes, HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, things that can be easily transmitted from person to person. So they have to be reported. So, for example, if you show up in the ER and you have some symptoms, and then later it comes back, okay, well, you got syphilis or gonorrhea, that has to be reported. So typically, the person that's responsible for that is not necessarily the ER physician that sees you, is really the nurse. The nurse is the one that has to follow up and do all of that. He or she is the one that typically has to take your history. They got to get the history of your partners. They have to try to get in contact with those folks.
Exactly.
That in turn gets moved up to a public health department, to whatever your local public health department is. And then there's a public health nurse that works within that works with that nurse in that ER that tries to track down all these folks that you've been in contact with. And once that public health nurse gets in turn with that, then they typically work with an epidemiologist who's usually most of your major universities, state universities, usually have an epidemiologist that's embedded in the region or at that university from the CDC. They work with them, and it just kind of goes up to the chain. Then it finally gets to the CDC. So again, this is how this stuff.
But most of those people, the kind of people that are out here passing around HIV, they tend to be the kind of people that are going to be under the they're going to kind of live a life that's off the radar. A lot of these type of people
actually no, they actually tend to be some of the most outwardly adventurous people, for the lack of a better term. You guys kind of mentioned it earlier. You talked about the people being in prison. The HIV/AIDS rates among prisoners is insanely high.
No. I was talking about as far as the tracking, as far as like a person that's going to go to the doctor, a person that's going to get their license updated on a regular basis, in a way that the state could actually force them to take these tests. You guys talking about, these tend to be people that are not the most disciplined in terms of staying up to date, is what I'm trying to say. A lot of these people don't find out they got AIDS because they don't get tested but once every 10 years. And they usually find out by accident a lot of times. This is
the reason why Mike was saying that there should be some sort of mandatory testing. Yeah. And now one thing Dr. Phoenix may be able to attest to is that even the people that get tested, right, that come into a healthcare facility, they can opt for that information to remain confidential. I've been in situations where I've taken care of a patient that's HIV positive, some of them full-blown AIDS. They're in the hospital for some type of pneumocystic pneumonia, whatever. The family doesn't know why they're sick. They could have a wife, a girlfriend, right there at the bedside, don't know why they're sick, and we can't tell them anything because it'll say specifically on their chart, you are not to disclose private health information with the girlfriend or the wife or whatever. So here they are with AIDS or maybe HIV, and they got a significant other, and you can't tell them. And so that becomes the problem with even making it mandatory. You have to change a lot of policies surrounding that as far as disclosure of information is concerned, number one. Number two, once you've actually compiled that data, the question then becomes, what are you going to do with it? Because the only way to control a disease for which you have no cure is quarantine. And that's something that nobody wants to hear. Well, I'm going to be honest.
And to follow up with what Super Trish just said, I would agree with that. Again, you know, he said pneumocystic pneumonia. Pneumocystic pneumonia is something that's very specific to people who have HIV/AIDS. Just to be clear about that, if you know of anyone that ever has had, quote, pneumocystic pneumonia, that is very specific to individuals with HIV/AIDS.
How did we get to where this STD epidemic?
But the reason why this is important is because, again, people display symptoms, signs and symptoms of these diseases, if you will. And again, they can opt to completely not have that get disclosed to a loved one, to family member, whatever the case may be. They can completely opt out of that, and is well within their rights as a patient.
But there are criminal laws against that, though, because even though they may do that, in a lot of states, I know
a lot of states that would be very difficult to really prosecute somebody under that.
Oh, not really. There was a brother just prosecuted in Texas. He just got 30 years for giving HIV to a bunch of women. This lady right now, the state's got laws. The question is, will the state enforce the law? That's the only question.
And therein lies the point.
Because if you go out past HIV, almost every state laws I've read, they have laws ranging from gross misdemeanor to serious felony. I know Texas has one of the strongest laws of passing a knowingly HIV to another person. They gave that brother 30 years for passing that HIV to those women. He gave it to like 4 known women, and it's probably way more than that. He got 30 years in prison. Just what was that, last year? So it's laws on the books for this to protect people, but most people don't, you know, they don't get caught.
But again,
you know, but now that person has been introduced into the prison population where we know condoms is not a priority. Now they're passing along HIV in the prison system. Those guys get released and they come back out into the population. Again, the only solution to a situation where you don't have a cure is actual quarantine. Now, King Sigma was about to ask something about, the actual, I guess the topic at hand is liberalism, and liberalism has directly contributed to this actual epidemic.
Yes,
because people have that latitude, that sexual freedom.
Yeah,
no accountability.
No accountability, and also, believe it or not, you know, and even though we all enjoy the benefits of premarital sex, right? The gratification it provides, but certain societies, when we look at old societies that have existed relatively unchanged throughout the centuries, they have certain, you know, societal norms and policies in place, and that seem archaic, right? But truly, their origins in these civilizations of antiquity is because they've actually kept in contact with their history, and they've seen the ill effects of certain liberties, and this is the reason why they've eliminated those liberties in their society, because they want to preserve their societies.
Even societies that try to do that today are having problems with that. To get what you want, Super Triz, to have that kind of archaic, traditional kind of gender roles and all that, you would have to go to a system like what Russia and China has, and that's not where we want to go. I don't want to live in a system like that. I don't want to live in Russia or communist China. To get the kind of system that you want, to bring the females back to heal, you would have to create a communistic system, because they have even with their systems, because of the internet, they're having problems even keeping it under wraps in some of the most draconian systems. So do you really want to turn the United States into a communist?
It's already moving in that direction.
There's a whole bunch of people fighting back against it going in that direction. Me personally, I don't want to see the country move in that direction.
You won't have a choice. They're already moving in a direction. They want the same controls. But I just want to make. There's
a lot of people fighting back against that, though. So we'll see.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem, King Sigma. Again, my overarching question that I always ask: as much as we enjoy some of the benefits of living in American society, how sustainable is it?
I mean, that's a good question, Super Triz. I've been dealing with that myself, pondering this situation because, you know, like what you're saying, you know, what you got this 80-20 situation in the sexual marketplace that leads to horrible outcomes as far as like family development. The STD rate is accelerating because of that. And yeah, I'm pondering it myself. I can't say I have the answer. I'm pondering it because I see what you're saying.
I want to make sure. I want to make sure I make this point before it gets lost. I think Super Trish said that it will be difficult to have that mandated testing and actually have patient information be shared availably to the public. What you can do. Were you going to say something, Super Trish?
No.
No, what you can do with that is mask the data. So all the PII, so all your personal identifiable information could be masked or made what we consider dirty. So we can actually make the data unreadable in that area, and only the data that's necessary that needs to be read is the fact that they are positive or they're negative. That's the only part that really matters, not exactly who has it, but what the calculation is. Because if you have a state like Georgia that has an outbreak like this, you have no choice other than to mandate testing at every area of adulthood.
You might want to do that, but what I'm saying to you, Mike, if you study the trends politically in America right now, there is a huge libertarian movement growing in America and a huge conservative movement growing that they're against that kind of thing. That's all I was saying to you, is that the likelihood of it happening right now in the current, I don't see it, because the trends are not going leftward. If you actually look at the political data from 2016 to now, the trend is going against government interference in people's private lives. And we already got HIPAA laws on the books. So you're talking about people actually wanting stronger privacy rights now as we go forward, versus even they already had HIPAA on the books in a more liberal, I don't like using that word liberal, but a more stated situation. They already had HIPAA on the books and certain layers of protection of the private citizen. Now you got, the libertarian movement is exploding right now.
Well, that's starting to change, because if you look at the gun laws now, they're actually doing background checks on people's mental health. That's supposed to be private as well.
But it hasn't gone to the moment it goes to the Supreme Court, all that stuff will be ruled unconstitutional. All that stuff happening at that level, it won't hold up at the Supreme Court though. The Supreme Court is gonna rule all those gun laws unconstitutional, because what I'm trying to say to you is that go look at the data. There's more people that are identified as independent and libertarian now than ever, and they want less government interference in their life.
Yeah, they want less government They want less government interference because the groundwork has already been laid out. So it's like now all the work has been done to get America to where they want America to be. Now we can actually enjoy some of these liberties, and so let's all be willy-nilly about ourselves, and then watch America unfold.
But that's not a true.
Like all the progress that's been made, all the progress that's been made will go down the toilet trying to preserve some of these individual liberties at the expense of the population as a whole. But I like my privacy, but I don't mind government tapping the phone. I honestly, I'm not doing anything illegal. Now I may be having some nasty conversations, and I may be sending some inappropriate text messages. But other than the nasty conversations and inappropriate text messages, and they may see some pictures they don't want to see. But you know what? If that's gonna prevent some type of terror attack, then so be it.
Well, a lot of people have certain feelings about that, but I won't go too deep into it. But I'll just say this: you got to also understand that a lot of people, when it comes to that STD thing, some people feel like that's something that's part of a lifestyle. So you also got that segment of American people that will say, "No, I don't. I have a clean life, and my partner, we have a clean life, so we shouldn't be subjected to that kind of authoritarianism," because those people that are living that kind of lifestyle, they will make the argument and say that that's them. So I'm just giving you the devil's advocate argument when it comes to the intrusion of government. People want less government right now going forward. That's why Trump's president right now. They
want government where they get their satisfaction from.
It's advantageous for them.
Yeah, where they get their satisfaction from, not where they feel that government is going to intrude, because the same people who don't want the government telling them about when they can have an abortion have no problem using the same government to take down brothers in the hood.
But they also have no problem with the government taxing certain people, right?
But it depends on which
as long as they get the benefit from the taxation. See, you don't want government intrusion, but you damn sure want taxes at a higher rate for people who make more money.
Certain segments do, and I'm not one of those segments. So I'm a flat tax.
Well, you're probably one of the you're part of the productive segment anyway.
But you guys are right, though. That is the paradox, though. You guys are right. That's the paradox, that you got groups that want government intrusion on certain areas, because especially with that abortion thing, but then in other areas they don't, and that's kind of the battle right now.
They don't want, like, for example, just people who don't want their guns taken away, even though there were 2 goddamn mass shootings in 1 week.
You know what the problem?
But the mass shootings weren't the cause of that. Those were
no. What I'm saying here is that it fits into the context of what you were saying. Now, whether guns should be taken away because there's some idiot who doesn't know the proper application or in usage of guns, that's a whole other subject. What I'm saying is that you do have people who on one hand will say one thing and they'll turn around and be staunch advocates that the government must do this. Just don't touch this over here.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Dr. Phoenix.
Let me just respond to somebody in the chat who said something about tainted blood fusions. There's very little chance these days of you getting HIV/AIDS from a blood transfusion. Really?
Yeah, they eliminated that.
I mean that's virtually nil. I mean, you have not seen anything remotely related to that since the very early 90s. Two, I think just if we're talking about sort of liberalism and how we just seen this complete aversion of sexual responsibility within Black society as a result of liberalism, of hyper-liberalism.
Now, how do you get that under control, Dr. Phoenix? Now, what is you coming from your standpoint and hearing what Super said about it? Now you stated the problem. What do you see as getting that kind of thing under control? See, I
actually agree with what Super said. I think you do need some. I agree a lot with what Mike B said as well. I think you need some method of testing people at all levels. Again, he talked about, brothers going into prison, spreading HIV and AIDS. They don't test them in prison. They don't even disclose. Prisoners, they don't.
I get the part about the STD, but I'm talking about more about the female hypergamy part.
But because here's the problem. Here's the problem with that, and I was going to get to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The problem is that a lot of these brothers, they come up out of here. They come up out of that prison system, and these women turn around and get with these brothers.
That's right.
And that is the reason why if you look at the current rates for HIV/AIDS transmission among new cases for Black women and Black men, Black women are practically twice as many as Black men.
Man, I was shocked.
And even if we were to look at the STD rates in general among Black men and Black women, you see almost twice that for Black women than it is for Black men.
Black men, yeah.
And so again, what happens is that at every level of society, we really do need to consider, testing. Whether it's the brothers in prison, you're coming out of prison, you show up in the ER, you need to be that should be. I think there should be mandatory testing in the ER.
Yeah, because it's already built into the cost center as it already is, and then you factor in the prison population, whether it's county jail or state penitentiary.
Yeah, I go to the VA.
Those are closed populations, so it should be a lot easier to test within that population than not.
To respond to, I just want to respond to King Simba real quick.
Go ahead.
To respond to that, really, libertarianism is really conservative, being conservative. Now, liberalism, what you're really talking about is the extreme side of it. So, yeah, I understand that they might not like it, but I mean, it's very easy. I mean, if you really think about it, it's very easy for 5 women.
It's not necessarily conservative, because if you follow
generally
not necessarily, because if you look at issues like, for example, you'd be surprised, but most libertarians are pro-immigration on even illegal immigration. That would be a very liberated policy. So libertarians are not necessarily conservative at all. most of them are not. I wouldn't call libertarians conservative. I would call like Republicans conservative. But libertarians, if you really study their ideas on different areas of human activity, I wouldn't really necessarily call them conservative on a lot of issues. So I'm just saying that that is a growing segment of the population. But what Super Triz and Dr. Phoenix said from a practical standpoint, I totally understand where they're coming from. And I'm just because Super went a little bit further though. Dr. Phoenix was focused on the testing part, but Super went up even further. He was talking about more about the cultural part. And what I was trying to get is that I'm trying to see which one of you guys can answer that question on how do you get that cultural part under control? So even if we take the testing part and say, okay, make it mandatory, I don't know if you can get the society that Super Triz wants with things.
I mean, ultimately,
I wasn't speaking about culture. I said quarantine.
yeah, he said
I'm talking about something far beyond culture. There's quarantine.
That's
and
like World War Z.
Honestly, I better be careful saying this over the airways because it may get your channel shut down.
Super Triz gonna have us like that movie Siege up in this motherfucker.
No, like World War Z.
Yeah, you gonna have some World War Z type shit, man.
But here's the thing, and Super Triz is actually onto something. If you look at any city where Black people are any significant number at, and you look at the hospitals they go to, typically they're not major hospitals. These are more like community hospitals. So they're just really small, medium-sized hospitals. You know, they're not designed to take on really acute cases or, you know, serious cases like that. They usually have to get transferred out. So what happens is that they're in hoods. They're in places that are severely economically deprived. So again, the folks are already quarantined to an extent just by virtue of where they live. And so you get all of these, you look at all these different neighborhoods and areas where in these cities where Black folks are at, and to an extent, Black folks are already quarantined.
So what's the benefits based on Mike V's question? So what's the benefits? Because
again, what happens is that, you know, eventually it's just like any good plague. Eventually it gets out and spreads to the general population.
I don't even think this is the argument. It's 10 women. Just think about it. 10 women with 2 partners a year, and I'm lowballing it. Do the math. Basic statistics. 10 women alone who are infected with 2 partners in 1 year, unprotected sex.
That's 200.
Think about that.
Basic,
yeah, 200. You're getting exponential numbers here.
Fast.
Damn, man.
Screw that. And I'm only saying 10 women.
So you guys don't see so the answer so in direct answer to Mike V's question, has I say statism benefited the Black community? Do you guys say no? Hell no, absolutely not. Like, what's your answer to that?
Wait, hold on. I didn't catch that. Say that again.
I'm just wondering what your guys' direct answer is to Mike's question. Has liberalism benefited the Black community?
No. And my honest,
of course not.
No,
clearly not.
No. I mean, the degeneracy you see within Black society today has pretty much been propagated by liberalism. I mean, this idea where we can do whatever we want and there are no consequences. We don't have to sacrifice. We don't have to be a selfless people.
So do you think that
we're seeing the price that Black society is paying? I mean, you guys, I think the brother Game Changer was talking about it earlier. The boomers got theirs. They got their pensions and their Social Security. Yep. Those of us that are under 45, we don't have that.
We're fucked. Well, generally.
I mean, and that's quite literally what's going on here. We don't have that. So you have to figure out ways for how you're going to get what they got without the help.
Now, can you do that in the current society? The way that it's set, like even if we take your mandatory testing program, I'm talking about just in general the sexual freedom that people have, and with the technology that we have to allow people to.
It's really easy to actually do something simple. Like this. It's really you can do it from a vending machine and actually an IoT device that would just prick your blood just like you would for diabetes. You know,
yeah, I mean they already have stuff like this.
I'm agreeing. I'm giving you guys.
I'm giving you
the testing part. I'm asking you the question to the part about the cultural part of liberalism, not just the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm talking about to your question directly. Has liberalism benefited the Black community? I'm saying, and based on what Super is saying and what Doctor, I'm saying, how do you move the society that has gotten used to this liberalism that so many people feel is so great? How do you guys see that going back to a more quote unquote traditional and conservative culture? Because I don't see it with
it's not going to. That's the thing, dude. It's not going to go back.
I mean, I think you just answered your own question, brother.
Yeah, it's not going to go back to anything. We're talking about if we are to adopt principles of true progressivism, okay, and if we are to look at ourselves as a block, Salshi was, I facetiously kind of spoke to his point, but the reason why I did it facetiously is because I actually agree with him 100%. Okay, you're talking specifically about this block being men who are essentially oriented towards leadership. Okay, that's going to be the block, the progressive block that we're speaking of. This notion or this idea of we and us in this community, I think it's not an actuality. I had noted prior. I said, look, when you take Black folks who are of the same sex persuasion, okay, what they'll say is they're gay first, they're lesbian first, and then they'll denote their race or lineage or nationality. See, so what that says is that before I'm Black, before I'm ADOS, before I'm whatever, I am my sexual orientation. You see, and so that in and of itself is a block. Okay, the LBGTQ. If we're not, please don't flag this channel. I'm just merely making a socio-political statement here that is based on truth. The LGBTQ is a block. It is a voting block. It's
a political organization.
The political organization.
Exactly. They call it a caucus.
Exactly.
I do just want to add something really quickly, because Super Triz talked about quarantine, and again, I know it sounds extreme, but I mean, King Sigma, you're in Milwaukee. I mean, you grew up in
Dr.
Milwaukee.
Phoenix is he's there. He's in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, man. I mean, even growing up in Chicago, and I've been to many other places in this state. I mean, in this country, excuse me. I'm telling you right now, Black folks are already quarantined. They just call them ghettos.
And I was just bringing it up because Mike's question, it's a pretty broad question. So I was just trying to see what you guys thought about it, because he said the Black community. So, he's talking about the whole, and I haven't really seen no benefits. You know what I'm saying? I don't see the benefits at all.
Right. But you're right about that. There's no benefit. And the other part of the problem is that we are not going back, like Conflict says. As a matter of fact, government policy now will prevent us from even, it's close to keeping us from changing the direction we are going in. Because what's happening is that the government policy is to protect.
Exactly.
Like say for instance, the alphabet community.
Mm-hmm.
The government policy is to protect them and let them grow.
Yep.
And not only that, but the government is pushing this policy throughout the world and preaching it to other governments. But as far as Black culture we as a culture is almost going obsolete.
It is bad. It's very bad.
What's happening is that the government are bringing in, and you see all these people come from South America, there's a reason why they're coming from South America. The children. And a lot of people are catching on to it now, that the children are what America needs, because America can train those children to be what it wants them to be. And if you see the education system itself, from the time they put kids into 3 years old into school, I mean into these schools that are teaching them that you can be what you want to be, and if they're showing them that you can't be different. So by the time this kid gets to be 18 years old, and he's got this brainwashing completed.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing he can do about it. Unless he has somebody like King says, pull him aside and say, look, let me show you how this is affecting you. And he begins to believe it.
DE, let me give you a little anecdote of what you just said. Now, this actually occurred at my daughter's Montessori school when she was there.
you know, there's large. So the school is run by Southeast Indian people, Sri Lanka. And a lot of the children that went there were children of color. So it's black, black kids, Latinos, a lot of Iraqis, Iranians. So it was a mixed group, and the majority of that mixed group were brown, had some melanated of some kind, and the minority was actually like white, were the white kids. And there was one family, the last year that my daughter was there, there's this one family that came there. Now, mind you, the dad was a doctor. He brought his daughter and his son, enrolled them into the Montessori school. Now, the little boy, he was younger than the daughter. They dressed him up in a dress.
What?
Now, follow me. So the little boy would come to school in a dress every single day. And literally, everybody was confused. Now, the school administrators were kind of like, okay, we're trying to adhere to the Montessori principles, right? So we're not going to tell you that's not allowed. But you got to understand something, right? You're dealing with a whole bunch of people here who carry traditional values. Like I said, a lot of the people who put their children in Montessori schools are people who come from other countries. And they say, okay, well, look, the most organic form of education my child can get here in America is in a Montessori setting. And now here it is, white folks bring their kids into the school and they dress up the little boy in a dress. And I can't tell you, man, how many times I had, like, I'm talking about Iraqi women, dude, in hijabs and everything. They would be coming up to me, they just like, what? Like, they're like, do you understand this? Do you understand this? And I'm like, miss, I'm gonna be truthful with you. I'm born and raised here. No, I don't understand that.
All right, that should be the last comment, man. We got to really jet out of here because we got the car.
Yeah, we got the other hangout. I just wanted to follow up on what D was saying because I experienced it at my daughter's school, man.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. If you have not hit the like button already, please hit the like button right now. Share the video as possible. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those on the community tab page. And we'll be back in about 10 minutes with Black Car Talk.
Peace.
Peace.